Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, series, and more.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Nicole.
And today we are so excited to be covering chapters 61 through 68 of A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. As always, let's start with our content warnings. While we're focusing today's discussion on this stretch of chapters and ACOWAR, these episodes do include spoilers for the entire ACOTAR series. These deep dives do not, however, have spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas' series, except at the end of every episode, where we include our Maasverse Madness segment. We'll give a big spoiler warning ahead of time so you can leave the episode if you have not read the Maasverse, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and /War Crescent City callouts.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why we're surprisingly saying thank you, Tamlin, this episode, then please go finish the books. We will be here when you're done.
Next, we of Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
We get a first kiss this episode, kind of, sort of, ish, but knowing us, we'll find a way to make it rated R. So please be mindful of those little listening ears.
Additionally, we are so excited to see you at upcoming live events.
We cannot wait for our first Fantasy Fangirls live show at Comedy Works South in Denver, Colorado on October 20th. VIP tickets are already sold out, they sold out instantly. It was insane, but you can still grab those general admission tickets.
We'll also be influencer partners at the Swords and Shadows Masquerade by Mountains of Magic in Highlands Ranch, Colorado on November 23rd.
You can also dance the night away with us and our husbands at the Fantastic Collections New Year's Eve drop party in Denver, Colorado.
And we have so much in store as podcast partners at Romantasy BookCon in Los Angeles on February 20th through 22nd in 2025. And speaking of 2025, we will also be featured guests at Enchanticon in St. Louis, Missouri on August 15th through 17th. We are so excited.
That's a lot of events, so know that you can get information and tickets to all of these, including our live show, in the link in the show notes.
And lastly, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and have been loving this ACOTAR series journey we're on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, and just more all around, please check out our Patreon.
We have 3 membership tiers that you can join. Number 1, the Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, community events, a book club, promo codes for live events, plus a 20% off discount for the merch store, all for $5 a month. You can also join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges. That is all for $10 a month. And of course, we have our newest and most highly requested tier, the Inner Circle, which includes everything from the first 2 tiers, plus lots of behind-the-scenes content, a welcome gift, giveaways, private Discord channel, name shouted out on the podcast, and that is $25 a month.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also in the show notes. And really and truly, thank you so much for supporting us as we have turned this podcast into our livelihood. It's all because of you, and we appreciate you so much.
And now it is time to don our Ianthe skin and infiltrate Highburn.
As always, Nicole is going to start this episode by summarizing what happens in ACOWAR chapters 61 through 68. So gather around, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 61. Winnowing back to the camp from the Google Suriel's demise, Fae-vorite is taken straight to the healing tent with a very injured Cassian inside. Cassian awakens, and while Reese is not mad at Fae-vorite for turning off her sharing location, he is definitely mad at Cassian for disobeying his orders earlier. Our emotionally intelligent Batboy calls his High Lord out on his BS, though, and the brothers embrace. Fae-vorite and Moore leave the tent to have it out because of Fae-vorite lying to Moore about leaving for the middle. And the fight ends with Moore telling her to get out. This is not the episode of Full House I was hoping for. Chapter 62. Enough family drama. Let's get back to magic. Nesta, springing into action, is ready to try her hand at scrying. And after some support from Cassian, she falls into her trance. Snoopy Fae-vorite, though, goes into Nesta's mind to make sure all is good. And nope, it's not. They found Hybern's army, and it's humongous. But some cookware is ready to play peekaboo. The Cauldron opens its metaphorical eye and sees the Archeron sisters. Back in the tent, our crew is exhausted and at a standstill of what to do until bursting into the tent, horny and ready for action, is Varian, who gets on his knees for Amren and makes out with her face. Chapter 63. Those two go off to bang, bang, bangity bang, with Amren leaving making purring noises. Feyre falls into a sleep where she dreams of Grayson calling for Elaine at the edge of the camp. Babe! I'm sorry, babe! Feyre awakens and knows that something is immediately wrong. It turns out Elaine was taken. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 64. It's time for a heist! Feyre dons Ianthe's skin by shape-shifting into the snake of the dead high priestess herself, who I will be calling Fae-anthe. And her and Asriel say their goodbyes, readying to winnow to the heart of the Hybern camp. Chapter 65. This place sucks! Fae-anthe and Asriel making their way downtown through the camp until they see 3 Claire betters, smelly and all. It's actually 3 children of the blessed, but never forget you, Claire! Fae-anthe runs into Jurian, who immediately knows it's Feyre. It's probably a bad sign when the one and only human can see right through your ruse, but oh well. It looks like Ianthe has been lusting after his ass, and Feyre's got a flirt. Who's surprised that Ianthe was thirsting after Jurian, not me? Fae-anthe decides she must save the one and only child of the blessed who is still alive, and Jurian will free her for them while they go save Elaine. Speaking of the reason we're here in the first place, Fae-anthe and Asriel find Elaine and free her quickly, and shifting back into her Feyre form, because that's a great thing to do while you're still in the enemy stronghold, the 3 of them make it to the edge of the camp. But uh-oh, they've been caught. Catch us if you can, Naga hounds. They can, but what's that? Oh yeah, it's the man-bear pig to the rescue, giving them just enough time to pick up the "I'm waiting for my Uber" child of the blessed and fly away. Not without Asriel getting his wings absolutely shredded, and Feyre needing a "you raise me up" from Tamlin. Our crew all make it to beyond the wards, including I am no longer the spy Tamlin, and they all winnow to their respective locations. Back in the camp, it's all hands on deck to get people healed, but once the 3 Archeron sisters are in a good spot, they create a sister snuggle puddle on the rug. Chapter 66, introducing the adorable Winter Court. After our newest army rolls into town, Mor takes Feyre to the edge of the camp so that they can apologize. But oh, what's this? It's time for the power of truth to finally share her secret. It turns out that Mor much prefers females. So much makes sense now. Honored that she shared her secret with her, Feyre is trying out for the role of Yenta from Fiddler on the Roof. Matchmaker, matchmaker. Back in the battle tent, it's time to prepare for our final showdown. They've realized that Hybern has been driving them north while he's already down south, ready to exterminate the human lands despite the 3 Archeron sisters. Sir, get your rage checked now. However, in order for our crew to make it down in time, they will have to exhaust themselves by winnowing. So they accept their fate, knowing that they will all die. But what's this? A tiny ancient one comes in with the Deus Ex Machina. She knows how to stop the entirety of Hybern's army. Chapter 67. Our crew spends the entire night winnowing as many humans as they can out of the human lands. However, Feyre's not done. Knowing she needs to do anything and everything in her power to get the advantage in this war, Feyre winnows to the Court of Nightmares. It's time to get a mirror. Chapter 68. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the spookiest of them all? Seeing a giant, scaly, and furred beast coming towards her, Feyre realizes, oh my god, it's me! It's okay, Feyre. Nothing a little nighttime moisturizer won't fix. Smash cut to the bone carver cell, and she gives him the mirror. But oh, it turns out he didn't need it after all. He just wanted to see if she was worthy. It would have been so much easier if you just asked for a window, my guy. But one thing is for certain, he is ready to fight for the Night Court.
You know what Feyre probably wants to do when she's done facing her innermost true self? I bet all she wants to do is lay down in bed on her luxurious Miracle Made sheets.
These sheets are infused with silver that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you'll get a better night's sleep every single night.
Bacteria found on your typical sheets can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. But you can sleep clean with Miracle. Miracle sheets are also luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels.
Go to trymiracle.com/FF to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo FF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels, and save an extra 20% off. Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund.
Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/FF and use code FF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/FF to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. All right, friends, it is time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, character analysis, lore, foreshadowing, theories, and oh, so much more. We're all still recovering from the Suriel's death last episode. Has everyone finished crying? Are we good? No. Okay. But at least now we're back in the camp located at the northern edge of the Summer Court. The battle that was raging when Feyre left has ended. And huzzah! Our Parthian side ended up turning the tide and beating Hybern's forces in this battle. But barely. Kyr's Darkbringers especially took heavy hits in this battle. Because our friends are still in the Summer Court, Tarquin was the High Lord responsible for deciding what to do with any survivors, which I'm going to assume is the same as he did at the battle days prior, where he selected a few to question and the rest he drowned on dry land. Our friends may have squeaked by with this battle wind, but there's bad news too. My sweet Cassian has been gravely injured. Oh dear! He was sliced with a sword from his navel to his chest, to the point where Azriel had to literally hold his guts in for him to buy him time before he could get to a healer. That is a good brother right there. And while the healer is working her magic on binding the wound, it's easy to tell just how bad this injury was, less than an hour ago. Yes, Nicole?
They can fix this, but they can't perform a fucking C-section? What the hell?
That's storytelling. That's all I have to say to that. Yes.
Sweet, that's it.
Now, this isn't the first or last time that Cassian's been seriously hurt in our story or in his life, but the cause of this injury is notable because Cassian disobeyed Rhys's orders. So here's what happened. Hybern soldiers overran Kyr's Darkbringers, cleaving his forces in half and breaking the line. Remember how important it is to hold the line. Cassian had been on a nearby hilltop, and when he saw this happen, he flew straight into the thick of this Hybern overrun. Rhys yelled at him not to, but Cassian felt he needed to stop the enemy forces before they did even worse damage. So, without waiting for his friends and on a mission to reform those damn lines, Cassian went right into the middle of those enemy forces and unleashed himself with his red siphons. Pew, 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 pew! He disobeyed. That's actually not the right sound. It was more like boom.
Are we in Star Wars now?
Brings me back to the Dragon Gauntlet when I was doing the sound effects for the different tail types. Oh my goodness.
Perfect.
He disobeyed Rhys's orders because he felt that this was the best shot at giving the Night Court soldiers a chance to reorganize and push back against Hybern. Azriel tried to fight his way toward Cassian to support him when he was surrounded by the enemy, but the battle was too thick and it was too difficult for Azriel to get to his brother fast enough. One of the Hybern commanders fought Cassian, and Cassian refused to turn away from his opponent because why would Cassian ever turn away from an opponent? I mean, come on. By the time Azriel did get to Cassian, Cassian was already gravely injured.
I stand by what I said last episode. I want every single battle reenactment done by you. As long as
we got a really big battle sequence coming up next episode.
Can't wait. So with Cassian awake and confirmation that he will be fine, Rhys's worry turns to, quote, "Don't you ever pull that kind of shit again. Dad is mad." This is one of the only times in the series that Rhys really pulls rank with members of the Inner Circle. Did Cassian disobey a direct order from his High Lord? Yes, he did. Did he make a decision based on being the commander of the Night Court armies and saw the lines breaking in battle and therefore tried to hold them all by himself? Yes. Which is his job.
Cassian reminds Rhys that he is a soldier and this is part of his job. While, yes, Cassian is at the highest level of soldier and he is the general of all of their forces, his job is literally dancing with death. He's not afraid of death. He's never going to turn away from it. He will always be on the front lines and first to charge because that is the kind of soldier and commander that he is. Hello, Jon Snow. And in this instance, he is reminding Rhys of that, where it's like, sorry, brother, my life is expendable for the greater good, and I accepted that a long time ago.
But as Cassian points out, Rhys's anger is not about Cassian disobeying an order from his High Lord. He says, quote, "So you're allowed to be mad about our choices to protect you, and we're not allowed to be furious with you for your self-sacrificing bullshit." Again, Cassian's emotional intelligence is just so all over the page. I love that he just cuts straight through the bullshit. Cassian pulling a self-sacrificing move on the battlefield and, yes, almost getting killed as a result is something that Rhys cannot stomach. And Cassian's honestly right here. Rhys is being a little bit of a hypocrite in this moment. Rhys's demeanor shifts after this calling him out, and he admits why he's really having this reaction. He is scared that he almost lost his brother today, and he cannot stomach seeing a member of his family hurt, even after last book where he was very hurt. Rhys wasn't there when his sister and mother died, and I'm pretty sure that's what cultivated a lot of this self-sacrificing streak of his. He was not able to protect two of his family members who he held so precious to him. So he will now do whatever it takes, including giving his own life away, literally in just a few chapters, to make sure no one else dies in his place ever again. And because of this admission, Cassian reaches forward, grips Rhys's shoulder as if to say, I see you, brother, and I know how painful this is for you to do. Oh!
But these two brothers aren't the only ones working through their anger. Mor is pissed at Feyre for deceiving her. Remember that Feyre had convinced Mor to go out onto the battlefield, and she heavily implied that she would stay here with Nesta, but really she needed to shake Mor off so that she could go after the Suriel. Feyre's exact words were, quote, Rhys has got wards around this camp, and I'm not entirely defenseless, you know. Feyre may argue that she didn't actually lie with her words to convince Mor that she would be fine, and Mor was more needed in the fight. But that is a major technicality, and for all intents and purposes, our girl did lie. Like, I love her, but that was a lie. Feyre absolutely purposefully misguided Mor because she knew Mor wouldn't let her go, at least without her. So Feyre was trying to shake her off.
I'll also point out that this is not the first time that an Inner Circle member is mad at both the High Lord and Lady for doing shit like this. Remember earlier this book, Cassian was furious at Feyre for what she did last book in Hybern. This is a pattern of the High Lord and Lady. They do this regularly.
Well, and so yes, Mor is upset. Plus, she had to admit to Rhys that she didn't know where his mate was during a time when the enemy is hunting Feyre and actively wanting to take her and use her and hurt her. I can imagine how terrifying that was to have to admit that to Rhys. Protecting Feyre from a fate worse than death was the whole reason Mor stayed behind from fighting in the first place. And she failed because Feyre duped her, signaling that Feyre doesn't trust Mor enough to confide in her or share her plans with her. You know who also doesn't share plans with people? Rhys. And it pisses the Inner Circle off. I know you just gave the example of Feyre with Cassian, but in this instance here, it's like, I'm not surprised at all that Rhys is like, it's okay, honey, no worries, just leave a note next time. While Mor is like, excuse me, this is not okay to treat the rest of us like this and be so self-sacrificing when you are this important.
Well, and let's also remember that Rhys didn't share that he was going to Amarantha's ball where he was cursed and then trapped for 50 years, along with the other High Lords. He went knowing that he was going to try to assassinate Amarantha and that he most likely was not coming back. He didn't tell any of the Inner Circle. So while I imagine that over those 50 years, their anger shifted to, oh my God, we just want our brother home. But I imagine if he had come back like a year later, they would have eviscerated him for what he pulled. It's almost like this is round 2 of Inner Circle, not even round 2. This is round 15 at this point of Inner Circle deception.
Nesta is also an easy target for Mor's anger, since she knew Feyre left, but Nesta didn't tell anyone. Plus, Mor already doesn't like Nesta, so there's that too, you know? However, in Nesta's defense, how was she supposed to sound the alarm that the High Lady left? Feyre didn't tell her where she was going. Nesta knows that she's a big girl who can take care of herself, and everyone else was literally fighting for their lives on the battlefield below. Rhys and the others only realized Feyre was gone when the battle was over, and Rhys was on his way to Elaine's tent when Helion sent word that he found Feyre. So there was just like a tiny window where Nesta could have been like, she's not here, and that's it. And I'll even add, this group of people always expect the worst in Nesta and make her reinforce her walls so she doesn't exactly consider them, especially Mor, approachable. And like I mentioned too, Nesta also didn't know where Feyre went, and she would probably have gotten in trouble for not having more information or for not stopping her sister. And she's like, I don't want to deal with that.
Well, let's also throw out that Nesta is not loyal to the Inner Circle. She is loyal to her family, although, yes, she does have some very weird ways of showing it sometimes. But she didn't have any loyalty to them to like make sure she says anything. I'm so on Nesta's side here.
Especially to Moore. Like, Moore is mad at her for not telling them. And I get it. I understand why Moore is upset. I also understand Nessa's perspective too.
Agreed. If you remember back in ACOWAR, we discussed how Feyre, when riled up, she goes a little tunnel vision and she can clap back hard. For example, when they were on the mountaintop after the Court of Nightmares last book, Feyre and Rhys, they are in the middle of a big fight. And Feyre says, quote, "Because what if you did let someone in and they saw everything and still walked away? Who could blame them? Who would want to bother with that sort of mess? Woof!" And here is no different. While Feyre does apologize, it's really half-assed though, like, let's be honest, she also, feeling rightfully attacked by Moore, maybe not so rightfully, verbally slaps Moore back with the most painful thing that she can say about Moore, which is, why does she not make a move on Azriel? She says exactly, quote, "You want to talk about lying? How about the fact that you lie to yourself and all of us every single day?" Whew. So before you accuse me of being a liar, I'd suggest you take a long, hard look at yourself. Ouch. Yeah.
So here, Feyre is implying that Moore does love Azriel, but has never made a move because she's afraid to admit it to herself and to him and the rest of their friends who have to be around the two of them.
We'll discuss later how Feyre, once learning about Moore's secret, she will feel bad, maybe uneasy is a better word, around knowing how she unknowingly threw this huge secret and insecurity into Moore's face. But we would be remiss if we didn't point out how on brand this clapback is for Feyre. She believes that when it comes to Moore, Azriel, and Cassian, she knows best. And she will soon learn how untrue that is and be put in her place a little bit. I'm actually very excited. Feyre internally notes in this scene how she hasn't really had a friend ever to quarrel with. We've seen this with her fights with Rhys, and she definitely is learning slowly how to fight. And I won't speak for you, but I know for me, learning how to fight is such a hard skill because when you are riled up, you're in that tunnel vision. You don't really think about all of the different things, but learning how to fight is a skill that, it's helpful.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.
Not surprisingly, this argument does not end well, and Moore kicks Feyre out. Amren comments that there are some truths that even Morgan has not faced herself, which makes me wonder, does Amren know Moore's secret? For how observant she is, I'm inclined to think that she has a hunch.
I 100% believe that Amren knows, but she's like, I'm not getting involved in this drama. So I think that she just steps away.
Yes. And to clarify what we're saying here is not that Moore told Amren, but no. Amren just has been able to sense it and pick up on it. Yes.
Exactly.
But Amren also offers some tiny Ancient One advice because you know what? Families fight. When you're this close together for this many years in super high tense situations, it's going to happen, plain and simple. What matters most is how you move on from the fight. Cool off, talk again soon when you're more level-headed, which is true for any of us in the real world. Who hasn't argued with those you're closest with? It doesn't mean you don't love and care about each other. If anything, it means that you care all the more for one another. But it's how you fight, how you get past it that defines your relationship. With Rhys and Cassian being a shining example here. They were just arguing because they care that much about each other, and they've been able to move on from it because they talked in their own, bat boy way, and they cooled down.
I want to highlight real quick why Rhys is not angry with Feyre. She is High Lady. She did disobey, not even disobey an order by any means, but she made a choice to leave and put herself in harm's way. Not entirely unlike Cassian, but I'm going to brush that under the rug for a minute. So why did Rhys have this brushing it off notion, basically? And it all boils down to that word again that we have come back to time and time again in these two books, choice. Knowing how important freedom is to Feyre, Rhys makes sure that choice is one of the highest values in their relationship. He says, quote, "I do not let you do anything. You are your own person. You make your own choices. But we are mates. I am yours and you are mine." This is why Rhys is GOAT. I love this. So he knows how capable she is. Yes. Was he scared? Of course, just like any partner would be when a partner is in danger. But like Cassian said earlier in ACOWAR, there is a difference between believing someone is incapable of a dangerous situation versus just being worried about someone's safety and knowing that they're capable in a dangerous situation. Again, was Rhys worried? Yes, just like any partner would be.
And beyond your emphasis of choice, which is spot on, I think he understood why Feyre did what she did on such a deep level, because he would have done the exact same thing, including not telling more. So it's like, I can't be mad at you. I would have done the exact same. I have done the exact same thing. Yeah.
So accurate. All right, family drama aside, we've got a war to win, people. After coming back from the Suriel, RIP, and learning that Nesta, who is connected to the Cauldron, she can find where it is being hidden and therefore find Hybern's full army. That's handy. So everyone gathers in the war tent for Nesta to do some scrying. First and foremost, let's talk about scrying for a second, because what the heck is this thing? Scrying refers to seeing or peeping and is a practice rooted in divination and fortune telling. This could be through gazing through something like a crystal ball, mirror, water, fire, glass, stones. No matter what you're doing, it all reveals a significant message, a vision, or a prophecy. In order to scry, the practitioner must enter a focused state that reduces mental clutter. It's almost like you're going into a self-induced trance. As Amren describes here, the tools that they use in the ACOWAR world are stones and bones. Quote, 3 stones for the faces of the mother, 4 bones for whatever reason the charlatans came up with that I cannot be bothered to remember. Iconic. The 3 faces for the mother is something we have seen before, and I also wonder if it's woven with the 3 interlocking circles that the bone carver drew. More on this a little bit later. The 4 bones, though, were the real question mark for me. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I have some rapid fire reasons this might be. So number 1 is the 4 elements that really, whenever you Google what is the symbolism of 4, that is one of the first things that come up. However, 4 in the Bible is frequently referenced in Revelation, which signifies the whole world. Also, on the 4th day, God created the sun, moon, and stars. So maybe hello, Night Court. Also, just maybe she loves the number 4 right up there with the number 7. Who knows? Nesta might be nervous to face the Cauldron and her magic again, but she answered the call for urgency in making this scrying session happen as fast as possible, which huge gold star for Nesta, who is facing her fears left and right through the second half of this book. She and Feyre are so very similar in the fact that when they have a goal or a purpose, they will overcome whatever internal fear they have in order to make it happen. And I'll even argue that I think Elaine is in there too. It's just not as, I'll call it aggressive or forthcoming as it is with Feyre and Nesta yet. The Suriel gave us a golden sign that, hey, you can learn a whole lot by doing this one thing. And Nesta is the one who stepped up to the plate. But also, she just saw that Cassian got hurt. His guts were hanging out of him, and she literally nearly lost him. So between that, the motivation to make sure that she ends this war as fast as possible, plus the fear for the humans' lives, saving all of them as much as possible with the wall going down, plus the guilt that she feels for not using her powers to help save the wall from coming down, Nesta is ready to make some money moves.
I'll even add to that because she is extremely angry and hateful toward Hybern. She is so mad at them right now for what they have done. And this is her way of directing these feelings toward the king and doing something about it. The king has pissed her off and she's ready to take action against him. Throughout this scrying, Nesta receives reassurance and support from Cassian in a way that has Feyre marveling. As she prepares to scry, he stands at her side with one hand on her lower back. It's his way of gently reminding Nesta, I am here for you. I will not let anything harm you. He is here to protect her and offer her comfort, which contrasts with Amren, who is here to ensure the job gets done.
I literally wrote in my notes, all caps, mates, mates, mates.
While Nesta casts her mind toward the Cauldron and finds the tether between them, Feyre uses her Daemati powers to go into her sister's mind to see what Nesta is experiencing. Nesta's mental gates are so fitting for her, that of an ancient fortress that are sharp and brutal and even iron. Yet they are wide open because Nesta doesn't know how to shield yet. Just like we talked about with Elaine and her vine gates, how fitting this is just like we talked about with Elaine and her vine gates last episode. I also find it interesting that both sisters have iron gates. It's like it represents their lingering prejudice against the Fae and wanting to protect themselves against them. Because remember, as humans, they had iron jewelry to supposedly do just that. I love too how in Nesta's mind, which this is the first time Feyre has entered, she describes it as dark, like she's never known. This is a little callback to the different types of darkness that Rhys taught her in ACOWAR. Rhys's darkness is powerful but comforting for his mate, whereas Nesta's is darker, more unknown and unfamiliar.
And that's also a bit of foreshadowing for the darkness within the House of Wind, that Nesta will connect to it late in Silver Flames and see the darkness that house holds and sees it reflected within herself.
Yes, exactly. And she won't be afraid of it anymore.
No.
In Nesta's mind, she has found the cauldron's location and is mentally there where the cauldron is. These two sisters can see Hybern's full army that they've been searching for, and it is bigger than they could have ever imagined. They see the king standing over a map in a war tent with Jurian and several commanders, with the cauldron there in the center of the room. With their mission accomplished to locate the cauldron and the army, Feyre insists that she and Nesta have to get out of here right now. But too late, because Nesta, reaching out to her tether to the cauldron, has activated it. Quote, as if some great sleeping beast opened an eye. And remember, the cauldron is already mad at Nesta for the power that she took from it, so the cauldron stirs like it's about to lunge for them.
All I can see here is that one scene from Lord of the Rings where like the Eye of Mordor opens and it's like, like it's like super intense.
Yes.
I also want to point out, Tamlin's not in the war tent. Does
Correct.
that say quite a bit on how highly the King of Hybern views Tamlin's participation on his side of the war?
Possibly. He could also be still trying to gather his troops. I don't know, but that's a very good point.
Troops?
Yes. That's the point. He's trying to gather them. Anyway, the only way to disconnect from the cauldron and mentally leave this Hybern war tent is twofold. Number one, mentally, these two sisters have to run through Nesta's iron gates, which serves as like the exit for her mind's eye. They have to get away from here before the cauldron gets to them, again, in this mental space, and they can feel the cauldron right behind them. Because of Nesta's deep connection with the cauldron, my guess is that the cauldron has the ability to physically reach through this mental space and get to Nesta as if she's really there. And number two, on how to get out of this situation, Nesta has to break the connection with the cauldron she grabbed onto for the scrying by opening her fist and letting the bones and stones scatter onto the map. Remember, she's still scrying here, people. When she releases the bones and stones, she is literally letting go of the cauldron link and detaching herself from its immediate presence. Which Nesta does. Huzzah! And only a throw blessed by magic could make the bones and stones land where they do on the map. Everyone, we have our answer of where the heck Hybern's real army is. The king has amassed his gigantic host along the western edge of the human territory, no more than 100 miles from the Archeron estate. In other words, the opposite direction of where our crew's army has been chasing his smaller forces. We get so much emphasis on how big this Hybern host is that I have to wonder if it's more than the 100,000 like the Lannister twins said. Technically, it should be less than 100,000 because Hybern has had these smaller armies battle and lose against the Prythian side. And to our knowledge, his allies on the continent haven't met up with them yet. And our side's 3 armies aren't nearly enough to go up against this huge Hybern host. Kallias would need 40,000 soldiers to stand a chance, but it's doubtful he has even half of that. Bottom line, the Prythian courts don't have nearly enough soldiers to go up against this gigantic Hybern force. These 3 armies barely beat one of Hybern's small forces. And the 2 court armies they're waiting on to join still won't have enough combined soldiers to stand a chance against Hybern.
Something I've thought a lot about recently is with the toll that performing magic and what it does to your body, especially in the ACOWAR world. Like, for instance, Nesta after scrying, is she exhausted or is she just thirsty? If so, I know the perfect way for Nesta darling to get rehydrated fast, and that is LMNT.
LMNT is a science-backed zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix designed to support active hydration and a healthy lifestyle. That's because this electrolyte solution has enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium to get you feeling and performing your best. Plus, my favorite part is that it has zero sugar, artificial flavors, or other dodgy ingredients to hold you back.
My favorite part of LMNT is the flavors, which is unsurprising. I love flavor. I love going through their variety pack, trying out different flavors, like depending on whatever my mood is. It feels feels like I'm getting a tasty treat no matter what on my daily element. I've also been doing a lot of like HIIT workout classes recently. So you bet I've been relying on LMNT for that rehydration. It's so good.
LMNT came up with a fantastic offer for us. Get your free sample pack with any LMNT purchase at drinklmnt.com/FFG. Be sure to try the new LMNT Sparkling. It's a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water to take on the go with you.
Well, that definitely tells us just how screwed they are in this final battle. Not only do they not have nearly enough forces, even with Kallias and Thesan arriving soon, which, quick pause, where the heck is Thesan? If he knew that war was coming, so much so that he had Nuon making the Faebane Begone powder, why would he not be there with Tarquin, Helion, and Rhys's armies just from the get-go? This also makes me wonder how many soldiers, we just went over how many we think Hybern has. How many soldiers do we think our crew has? Would we include every court that has shown up so far? I'm not including Baron and Tamlin and them right now. I'm guessing 40,000? Maybe when we include, Kallias and all them?
I have been trying to guess it all, and I just keep pulling numbers out of my ass. and I'll also say this. SJM does not give us any clarity. There are no real Easter eggs. There's a few thousand here and little arbitrary hints, but it's can you just give us the numbers? My goodness. Anyway, here is my complete guesstimation. There's probably only about 1,000 Darkbringers left, if that many, because remember, we started out with a few thousand and they took really heavy hits. I'm thinking maybe 15,000 Summer Court soldiers. There is probably a lot more to begin with, but they have been through 3 battles now. So they've taken a lot. Yeah. I'm going to say less than 20,000. The only number that we actually do know is definitely less than 20,000 Winter Court soldiers. Remember, they are hopeful that maybe they have 20,000. So I'm going to say, minus a few thousand there. And then, of course, we have the Illyrian warriors, which what we guesstimated about 10,000 for them, which we know is at least bigger than Thesan's aerial legion because the Illyrians are the biggest winged legion. Then I have no clue with Helion. He did say Amarantha did a number on his court. So let's just say 10,000 maybe.
Would Illyrians have more than 10,000? Would they have closer to 20? Maybe? I don't know. That's a lot.
That is a lot. And especially remember because the Cauldron just made 1,000 go poof. And that 1,000 was it certainly wasn't half of them by any means, but it really was not just a little drop in the bucket. So that's why I'm thinking maybe 10,000. So let's just say all combined, they have 60,000-ish. It's a little more than half as many as Hybern. Again, I have no idea though. If SJM had actual numbers in mind, I feel like she would have given us more. And we can just chalk this up to author math. Which is a real thing, everybody. Author math is the death of me.
Oh my God. However, there is one more thing that we have learned from this scrying session. Hybern has been toying with them again, pushing them north so that they now have to exhaust themselves to get south in order to face the full force of Hybern.
Plus, Hybern has tricked them into going toward the middle. So option 1, they stay here and risk Hybern taking his huge army north to push the court's forces into the middle, which will weaken them. What with the scary creatures and dense forests in the middle, all of which are definitely bad for armies. Or option 2, the courts move south to face Hybern's army head on, but they know they don't have nearly enough soldiers as we've been talking about. These are 2 lose-lose options for our crew, but they're leaning toward waiting only until the rest of their allies arrive and then all go south to bring the fight to Hybern. No matter what though, they're left with the problem of having too few soldiers against Hybern's supposed 100,000.
Rhys in the scene has wrath just rippling off of him, quote, not just at Hybern, but at himself for not thinking that Hybern might be deliberately toying with us, positioning us here. I'm not gonna lie. Knowing Hybern and all that he's put them through, yeah, Rhys, you should have thought of this as a possibility, my guy. The weight of this decision that they need to make is just too grand to do after a day of battle, where they also almost lost very badly. So they all decide to go take a nippy nap, go rest up, and meet up tomorrow at dawn to figure out next steps. Yes, time is of the essence, but they are all so tired. And let's be real, making a big decision after a day where you need some sleepy bye, that is never a good idea. But also, they're feeling the weight of being a step behind again. And while no one will outright say it, there is this air of, I'm going to say hopelessness, but maybe it's not that dramatic. But like there is this air of hopelessness in this fight with all of Hybern's chess maneuvers. That fiery motivation is flickering out of them. And there is battle burnout is what I'm almost going to call this, that is associated with that. They might have only been at this war for a few weeks, but the weight of constantly having to change their approach is heavily weighing on them. Someone else is changing his approach too, though. And it happens to be working out for him quite well. Varian bursts into the tent, his eyes fixed right to the tiny ancient one. He is panting, as if he sensed she arrived to the camp and has come running towards her as a result. Quick question. Could this be a mate's clue that he sensed her presence, or is she just that powerful?
I don't think they're mates, not in a bad way, but just in a, she is not of this world. Yeah. I don't think that she can have a mate.
No,
Sorry,
I agree.
Amren. Yeah. So I think that it is just her power and just he's got the hots for her,
Yeah, he does. Anyway, Varian strides towards Amren, drops to his knees. Yeah, he does. And kisses her. Get it, my guy. Amren wraps her tiny ancient one legs around his waist, and without breaking the kiss, he walks out of the tent. Amren dragging her hands through his hair, making sounds that sound a lot like purring. Iconic. I love this. What I would give for a story of Amren and Varian in the Summer Court last book. What happened there to lead to this moment? I need... Their love story doesn't seem like... I need their lust story. I need to know how the hell this happened. How did this come to be?
I think her scariness seduced him in the Summer Court. I don't really think a whole lot happened off page, actually. He just hasn't been able to stop thinking of her since. Oh my God. And then when she was gone, it just amplified it and stirred up all of those feelings and everything like that.
I'm so happy for them.
As Feyre sleeps that night, she has quite the strange dream. She dreams of the Suriel bleeding out and smiling, and of the Weaver's open mouth ripping into Ianthe. But importantly, she dreams of Grayson standing at the edge of their camp, calling out to Elaine that he has come to take her home with him, that he has found a way to make her human again. Feyre also dreams of the Cauldron in the king's war tent, awakening in her and Nesta's invisible presence and knowing that they were there. Quote, I could feel it watching me, even then, in my dreams. Feel it extend an ancient black tendril towards me. And then she wakes up, immediately sensing that something is wrong. Something is here. Dun, dun, dun. Turns out Nesta and Amren's spidey senses were tingling too, which makes sense as they're the only other two made people here. We will learn that when Nesta did the scrying and grabbed onto her tether to the cauldron, she metaphorically opened a door. She can locate the cauldron, and this is the bad part, the cauldron can locate her. Uh-oh.
I love the moment where Nesta asks Feyre if she can hear it too. And while Feyre later will be able to hear the cauldron spookiness, she can't at first. And I think this just goes to show how much more connected to the cauldron Nesta is than Feyre, where almost her first instinct is to listen to it, whereas Feyre has to think about listening to it, if you know what I mean.
So yes, I'm going to get to that here in a moment. I don't think the cauldron was physically here at the camp, stomping around on its feet, but rather its spirit was here, for lack of a better term. That is what actually traveled here. The cauldron is wielding its complex and powerful magic to, in essence, be here. So if this open door applies to Nesta's connection with the cauldron, why can other made females sense its presence too? We've talked about how Feyre and Amren, and probably Miriam, since she's made too, are indirectly connected to the cauldron because they are made and therefore different than others. Their very beings are not naturally of this world, which makes them stand out from everyone else and uniquely able to connect with the cauldron as well as wield the Book of Breathings. How? I have no further explanation. Magic. But Nesta and Elaine are made by the Cauldron, so they have a direct connection to it. And Nesta most of all because she took power from the unwilling Cauldron. We've talked so much about that. This is also why she is able to hear the Cauldron's siren song before the other two can in this instance, which, by the way, I love how it's described as a siren song. The siren song is especially linked to the siren creatures in Greek mythology who lured sailors to shipwreck. A siren song in general means something that is very appealing and alluring on the surface, but it is ultimately deceptive, dangerous, or destructive. Yep, that checks out in this scenario. So Nesta activated the bridge between her and the Cauldron, enabling the Cauldron's power to reach out and be here at their camp, slithering around and looking for something or someone. Azrael can sense it too because the shadows and the wind recoil at the Cauldron's presence here.
So everything seems fine and dandy with the Cauldron's presence slowly slithering away. That is, until Azrael says, what about Elaine? First off, I love that he is the one to wonder, obviously, that where is she? Is she all right? When previously this would have 100% been Nesta, and I'll even throw out Fae-vorite too. The crew sprints towards Elaine's tent only to find her bed still warm with no Elaine in sight. And it dawns on Fae-vorite. The Cauldron casts its power to pretend to be Grayson standing on the edge of the camp, beckoning Elaine with that siren song Lexi was talking about, promising her love and healing, which just breaks my freaking heart. Last episode, we talked about Elaine and how she would do anything to be back with that old human life and her old human fiance. And the Cauldron really exploited that in her desperation. So why, after all the Cauldron gifted to Elaine, would it take her away into this enemy territory? We know that the Cauldron purrs in Elaine's presence. It gifted her the gift of seership. Seership? Sure. But we also know that Nesta insulted the Cauldron now multiple times. One, when she took a piece of its almighty precious power back at the end of ACOWAR, and now two, when she used its tether to spy on it. A tether that the Cauldron does not want or does not choose to have with Nesta. So the Cauldron, in that moment where the pathway between the two of them was open, learned what was precious to Nesta and stole it in return.
We'll soon find out that Elaine arriving at Hybern's camp actually surprises the king. So this means that he did not tell the Cauldron to take Elaine in this instance, although he will be, of course, quite happy about it. This is the Cauldron acting of its own accord to get back at Nesta by taking what is most precious to her as payback for what Nesta did to it, as you were saying there, Nicole. It's also interesting because there's been some questions about whether the Cauldron likes the King of Hybern. And it's doing the king a favor, but it's more so doing this on its own accord. Yeah.
I also can't even begin to imagine that scene where just Elaine just poof, like pops in and the King of Hybern's like, gah! It's like, yeah, what are you doing here? I love that little short story. It might not be as funny as it is in my head, but it's canon. That's a little head canon for me right there.
Listen, we're all busy, and the last thing we want to do at the end of a long day is figure out what to cook for dinner. Luckily, the decision is easy for my family with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in only 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, there's at least time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals without the stress. I love, 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 love how Factor gives me and my family the chance to eat restaurant quality meals while keeping my kitchen time to a record minimum. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to select from every single week, there's always new flavors to explore. Plus, Factor adapts to your lifestyle. You can choose from 6 different menu preferences, so whether you're looking to manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced, Factor does it all. Head over to factormeals.com/fantasyfangirl50 and use code fantasyfangirl50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code fantasyfangirl50 at factormeals.com/fantasyfangirl50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. So Elaine is now in Hybern's clutches. Oh dear! Our crew wastes no time in formulating a plan to get her back, which, by the way, the details of this Hybern infiltration, they never really stick in my memory when I read this book. Maybe because the scene, it's like sandwiched between the iconic High Lords meeting and then, of course, the final battle scene. Because when I'm reading this, it's like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm reading this for the first time, even though it's definitely not the first time I've read the book. Anyway, Nesta is a mess right now. coiled in on herself and convinced there is no way they'll be able to retrieve Elaine. She saw the host that Hybern has. She knows how impossible it is to infiltrate that camp and come out alive.
Which, this has a lot of weight if Nesta, Elaine's number one protector, is saying that it's hopeless and Elaine's dead. Elaine's gone, basically, is what she's saying. That is how outmatched they are to Hybern's forces.
Yes. But you know what?
What?
We have a shapeshifter among us. So here's the plan. Feyre shifts into Ianthe, who was killed by the Weaver less than 24 hours ago. So there's a chance Hybern has not learned of her death yet.
Amazing use of your powers. Unlike Tamlin, who never uses this power except for Man-Bear Pig. Whereas Feyre's like, let me shift into another human being.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And this is her second time doing it because last time she shifted into Tarquin to go get the Book of Breathings. Okay, now back to the plan. Azriel will go with her because he is a stealthy shadow singer and determined to save Elaine. More on that in a moment. Rhys will not go because the king will sense his power and give them away. However, there are wards and ancient magic around this gigantic camp. So Feyre and Azriel will have to travel to the outskirts of the camp and then just walk on in versus winnow directly to Elaine's location inside the camp, since that's, of course, impossible with all these spells. Then, once they have Elaine, they'll have to walk back out of the wards before they can winnow back to this camp. So the real problem here is, how the hell do they walk directly through the camp to get to Elaine and back out again?
I have a question. And you know what? Smell Watch is back, because Feyre would smell like Feyre, not Ianthe, right? Or is it when you shapeshift, it covers up your OG sense, your OG smell? Because when the Naga Hounds, they will be able to smell Feyre and Azriel, but only after she shifts back into herself and after Azriel materializes out of the shadows. So I guess that when she is Ianthe, she gets her smell too. That is way more than I ever thought I would think about this.
I hear what you're saying. I will also say I don't know if the people that they're interacting with, like the guards and such, if they would really notice.
Okay, that's fair. Sure.
Because they don't smell Ianthe as much. I have no idea. And pretty much, I think that it's a given that if they come across the king, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah,
so,
that's super fair.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll accept that. I will accept that answer. But before we get any further, we have to talk about Azriel here. Because with horror filling the air, what could be happening to Elaine in this very moment? Oh dear. A voice steps in from the shadows. I'm getting her back. Azriel to the rescue! There's this beautiful description here. Quote, Azriel's hazel eyes glowed golden in the shadows. This is one of 2 times that Azriel is described as golden in this stretch of chapters. And I wonder if it's to represent Elaine and the sunshine that she brings into the story and almost like tying them together in that way. That was at least my headcanon around it. Azriel stepping in to save Elaine is not entirely out of character for him. It's something any member of the Inner Circle would do. They step in, they save the innocent, all that kind of stuff. Plus, Azriel is a shadow singer. He is made for stealth missions. But here, it is also for us readers, it is yet another sign to pull that Azriel is feeling this, fuzz of feelings towards Elaine. She is someone who does not balk from him, his wings, his scars, and his quietness. They've bonded enough to the point where Feyre asked Rhys why on earth the mother didn't make them mates instead of, making Lucien and Elaine mates. Also, Azriel was trapped in a dungeon for years and years and years of his life. So while he was not in Hybern's clutches, he knows what it's like to be trapped. And it's something like, I almost imagine he just can't even stomach Elaine, who is so lovely and positive. He can't stomach Elaine going through that kind of entrapment. Using one of Azriel's siphons as the High Priestess circlet, I love this. Fayanthe and Azriel are ready to winnow away, but not without a quick pep talk from Rhys. Quote, Ianthe sold out your sisters. It's only fitting to use her to get Elaine back. He's got a point.
I also applaud him for looking past the physical Ianthe appearance and seeing his mate's soul in this moment. Ianthe tried to sexually assault him. He hated her with a burning passion. Yet here his mate is in her skin, and he doesn't balk whatsoever because he sees the true Feyre inside.
You can tell with all the show don't tell language happening during their goodbyes in this tent that he is so afraid for his mate's well-being. She is going into the heart of the highest enemy territory. But what I love is that in this moment, he doesn't tell her to be safe. He instead tells her, quote, "You do not fear, you do not falter, you do not yield. You are a wolf and you cannot be caged." Everything in this language is, I trust you. I trust your powers, your badassery, your cunning, your strength. Go use everything you've got and bring your family home. Number 1 book boyfriend reporting for duty.
I also really appreciate the show don't tell with how Rhys and Azriel are using formal words and titles in this moment. They are brothers, but right now, Azriel is going into enemy territory with his High Lady and his High Lord's mate. That's a heavy weight to bear, and Az is prepared to carry it and bring Feyre and Elaine back to safety at whatever cost. Once arriving at the specific location that is outside the Winnow Wards, but inside the spells that hide this Hybrid force from sight, Feanthe and Azriel see the army camp for themselves. There are as many campfires as there are stars in the skies, and there are mean beasts that are more like a feral, animal-like version of the Naga, not a good version of feral like we usually say. This camp is described as a squatting terror, drinking the life from the earth. Luckily, Feanthe passes the first test of going past the guards at the edge of the camp with Azriel hidden in her shadows. Phew! The fact that they didn't raise the alarm indicates that word has not spread that Ianthe is actually dead. That's a really good thing. They were banking on that. Feyre really channels her inner Ianthe, modeling her actions after the high priestess she observed for so long in the spring court. Looking the part is only half of it. She also has to act the part. They also time this infiltration well because it's the early hours of the morning when the enemy is either sleeping, doing nighttime bad things, or on guard.
Feanthe begins to hear screaming and panicking, thinking that it's Elaine. She makes her way over to the rack with 3 hanging naked bodies, with one still alive and able to scream. It's Claire Better 2.0. Never forget you, Claire. Feanthe has seconds to decide what to do. Leave the only alive one to be continued to be tortured and eventually die, or find a way to save her along with Elaine. Feyre's role in Claire Better's fate, and by fate, I mean evil death, continues to haunt her to this day and used to be something that would quite literally keep her up at night. So the question boils down to, can Feyre live with herself if she leaves someone to a similar end that Claire had? And as she notes, she did once kill 2 innocent people, and this would be as good as sending yet another innocent to their grave if she doesn't step in. But she can't do it. Under the mountain, she felt like she had no choice but to commit those murders. She was in a helpless situation and felt completely powerless as a human. But that is not the Feyre we know and love anymore. She has a choice. She is no longer helpless or alone. And as we've mentioned, she is a badass High Lady now. So she tells Jurian to save the Child of the Blessed and bring her to the edge of camp. Speaking of which, hey, Jurian's here. Yay, an ally. But he immediately recognizes Feyre playing Ianthe, which, pause. How? How? He knows that Azriel is also here in the shadows. Did Jurian get some powers from the Cauldron, or is this just rapid storytelling?
So that was my question too. In my annotations, I was like, wait a second, like, how does Jurian know? Did scouts somehow tell him that Ianthe died and he just hasn't told the king yet? And he put 2 and 2 together, knowing Feyre is a shapeshifter and her sister is here? But I actually think you're right, Nicole. I think he has his own spidey senses now after emerging from the Cauldron. Another thing too, he could just be that observant, knowing they would probably try to rescue Elaine, and then he recognized that Ianthe is acting a little different, and the blue siphon, of course, gives it away. He worked a lot with the Illyrians back in the previous war, so he recognizes those siphons.
Well, and he had nothing to do for 500 years but be an observant eye on a ring. So I think you're right. I think he's just that observant. Headcanon.
Go Jurian again.
Like, one of the most unexpected things from the ACOWAR deep dive has been how much of a Jurian stan I am.
I know, right?
Well, it looks like Feanthe chose a good dead high priestess to impersonate, because Ianthe's been lusting after Jurian for weeks now. Okay, who's surprised that Ianthe has been thirsting after Jurian? Homegirl, you're consistent, but you're terrible.
Jurian tells Thanthe that she's got 5 minutes to free her sister in the tent and get to the western edge of camp with a cliff overlooking the river. Meanwhile, he'll do his best to get the tortured child of the blessed to the location so they can save her as well. He offers Thanthe a piece of advice too. Save a dagger for her own heart because she cannot, under any circumstances, let Hybern catch her alive. Jurian would know better than anyone in this entire world what happens when you get caught in Hybern's clutches. And he does not want Feyre to endure the torturing and limbo he went through for centuries. Inside the tent that holds the cauldron, Thanthe begins to recite a pretty prayer that she heard Ianthe say 1,000 times in the spring court. I just love that she is, in a way, getting back at Ianthe and rescuing her sister by using Ianthe's evil fake innocence as a cover, kind of like what Rhys had been saying too. All the while, she and Azriel are searching for Elaine. And huzzah! They find her behind a curtain. She may be chained in spellbound steel, but otherwise Elaine is unharmed. And Elaine and Az share a quick moment. Like Nicole said earlier, there is obviously a lot of unsaid feelings between the two of them, some of which they might not even fully understand themselves right now. Her knight in shining armor isn't actually Grayson like she's been desperately hoping for. No, it's a sexy bat boy shadow singer who understands her in a way no one else does.
So Azriel gently removes the gag from her mouth, which I have a feeling that is not the last time I will be saying that when it comes to ACOWAR 6. And Elaine looks in almost disbelief. You came for me. Yeah, I did. My guess is that this is also a moment that really cemented their mutual affection. I'll say mutual affection for each other, where they've kind of been dancing around it and really laying like more of a friendship foundation. But this is a moment of, oh my God, you care for me enough to come after me. That's very sweet.
But there's no time right now to keep shipping Elaine and Azriel. Our trio needs to hurry because, the king is coming. Also, quick note, Elaine doesn't tremble or cringe. She is being so brave and showing that inner strength when it matters most, and I'm just really proud of her. I can only imagine how scared she was being in Hybern's clutches again, especially with the screaming and the torture happening literally right outside her tent. Last time she was kidnapped by Hybern, she was forced into the cauldron, and this time it would have been far worse, whatever would have happened to her. I believe the only reason she is in a position to be saved and unharmed is, number one, like I mentioned earlier, the king was taken aback when she arrived in the camp, so he's been figuring out what to do with her. And number two, our night court friends acted fast. It was only a matter of hours before they came to her rescue, knowing that every minute counted. So anyway, Azriel makes the trio invisible with his awesome shadow magic, and they run away from the tents and toward the western cliff. The Naga-like beasts are chasing after them, able to scent them even if they can't see them. Feyre grabs a bow and ash arrows, fires it at one of the beasts and hits it. Pew! She thinks that she can feel the Hybern commanders racing along with the hounds, though I'm pretty sure we will soon learn that it's actually a beast of a very different nature keeping up with them. Ash arrows are raining down on them, attempting to blindly hit a target while they're still hidden in the shadows. And while Azriel's blue shield stops the ash arrows from piercing any of them, it causes the shadows to fade. The hounds are closing in as they near the cliff, trying to herd them in. The child of the blessed is up ahead. Thank goodness for good guy Jurian, who is always trying to help his humankind, even if he knows it's a really bad idea for their escape plan. And that's when the king of Hybern pulls a Voldemort at the Battle of Hogwarts, and his voice fills the air, taunting them. He's convinced that he's got them. There's no escaping. Wah-ha-ha-ha-ha. But the wards end just beyond the cliff. All they have to do is fly beyond the cliff for a short distance before they can safely winnow away. Except Feyre still sucks at flying because it's really hard. Come on, girl. You've been training most of the book for this very moment. You can do it. You must do it so you don't end up like Jurian. Except, damn it, there's an ash arrow in her shoulder. No! Keep running. Run, Feyre, run!
But you know who's not running? It's the king of Hybern. No, he is walking unhurried and 100% sure of their capture and his yet again victory. And I'll say this, he has every right to be this cocky based on previous moves. Plus, he knows he has the Cauldron on his side. He is so sure that this war will go his way. And now the mother is just gifting him this, like, the number 2 best prisoner in his clutches, Feyre, behind Nesta, obviously. But what was the king not so sure of? A roar ripping through the clearing. Bear Pig to the rescue, leaving the King of Hybern's jaw agape in surprise that Tamlin would work against him. Look, as much shit as we've given Tamlin in this podcast, I will give him this. The Night Court has done their best to surprise the King of Hybern for 2 books now and has failed at every turn. And Tamlin managed to work behind his back. Now, is that a testament to his sneakiness? Or is it that the King of Hybern expects very high-level chess playing from the Night Court in the Inner Circle and has much lower expectations for Tamlin? We will never know. And also, I'll just point out that the 2 people that have actually managed to dupe the King of Hybern are Tamlin and Jurian, not the Night Court. Proud of him.
Yet.
Good point. We got monsters coming up. Golden Fur runs into the Naga hounds, and Feyre catches a glimpse of his eyes that seem to say, "Run, Feyre, run!" I gotta say, I think I've seen this film before, because Tamlin has once before saved her from the Naga creatures in his man-bear pig form. And it was right after she trapped the Suriel for the first time. I just love that little parallel there. Tamlin continues to take out the hounds. That is until all of them pounce, and man-bear pig lets out a yelp of pain. Like, I imagine it's like, like one of those. But he still does not yield an inch to these Naga creatures.
Asriel tells Feyre that she needs to fly and asks if she can make it. I think if she gave him any hesitation, and this is nothing against Asriel, he may have ditched the Child of the Blessed, because no way is he leaving his High Lady behind.
Fair. Extremely fair.
Yes. But that's not Feyre's style. She knows she needs to be able to make this running takeoff. There is no other choice. So Az has Elaine in one arm and he grabs the human girl to get ready for takeoff.
As Tamlin is fighting the Naga hounds, one breaks free of his hold and runs towards Asriel, Elaine, and Briar, the Child of the Blessed. It latches its claws into Asriel's spine and wings and begins to shred. Somehow, Asriel manages to stay airborne, and it's Elaine who slams her foot into this hound's face, making it dislodge its claws and fall into the ravine. Go, Elaine! Oh my God! What a badass! Sadly, though, Asriel is so injured, but he puts a temporary blue siphoned light around his wounds to staunch the bleeding. Later, Feyre will think about what events in his life have led him to be able to manage this level of pain. And as dark a thought as it is, I assume that in future books, especially like an Asriel point of view book, we're going to maybe not be getting his backstory, but be getting more understanding as to why he is able to withstand pain such as this, which is dark. But this is so much bigger than just Asriel getting injured in this moment. We know that eventually he will heal and be able to fly again. But because of this injury, he will not be able to fight in the final battle until it seems all hope is lost. And this is a huge blow to the war effort. I mean, he is one of 2 people who has 7 siphons, aka a lot of power. He is also a shadow singer, meaning he's extra super powerful. He is also just an amazing fighter who is probably worth like a dozen Illyrian soldiers. I'm just pulling that number out of my ass, but that's saying something. It doesn't mean all hope is lost, but it means that someone who is very high in command and high in killing power will no longer be out there with them. That's bad. But back to this moment, because Asriel may have successfully gotten airborne, but Feyre's still running away from Hybern and the beasts trying to get past Tamlin. She attempts time and time again to get her wings up so she can fly to the edge of the wards and just be on the cliff. But with each wing beat, she slams back into the ground.
Come on, Feyre, you have no choice but to succeed, or you'll have a fate worse than Jurian's.
And then, quote, a warm wind kissed with lilac and new grass, smell watch, blasts up from beneath me, a wind of spring, lifting me, filling my wings, my feet rose and rose. Thanks, Tamlin! If you're not watching this on YouTube, you are missing out.
Holy moly, we need to talk about this, because Tamlin and Feyre are obviously not on very good terms. He made that abundantly clear during the High Lord's meeting. So why did he save her? And in the process have to reveal that he is a spy against Hybern. I would first like to preface this by saying this explanation does not negate what Tamlin has done. He did a lot of inexcusable things. I really want to be clear about that. And This here particularly proves he is quite the three-dimensional character. I don't know if I would call this a redemption arc, but it's a big reminder that Tamlin from ACOWAR Book 1 didn't just completely disappear as much as it feels like he has because we're in Feyre's limited narrator POV. He is not a straight-up monster like she has made him out to be, understandably so from her perspective. He is a male who needs a lot of therapy and makes some very, very poor decisions. 4 out of 5 times he doesn't have malicious intent. Emphasis on the 4 out of 5 times there. Like Nicole pointed out during the High Lords meeting, he does still love Feyre, present tense there. He wants to ruin her for revenge in his own narrative, but he also can't let her die. The Tamlin we know from ACOWAR and even ACOMAF would never let her meet this terrible fate. At his core, he wants to protect her. As he'll say at the end of this book, he wants her to be happy. Above all else, he wants her to live, even if it destroys him in the process. Again, as he proved in ACOWAR. Never forget, he saved her life at the cost of his entire court staying cursed. So by protecting Feyre, Tamlin has shown his hand to Hybern. And I want to take a quick moment to analyze his original bargain with Hybern from Tamlin's perspective. Because there is a solid argument that he did not have a choice in this bargain, and he did what he could in a very bad situation. There is a Reddit essay by Raccoon Nam, I think I pronounced that correctly, that explains Tamlin's Hybern bargain from his POV, and I find this essay truly insightful. We do link it here in the show notes if you want to take a look at it. We and Tamlin know that Hybern was going to make the first move to start this war. We and Tamlin also know that the Spring Court will inevitably be the bloodiest battlefield in Prythian because it is the closest to the human lands. Tamlin did not have time to call old alliances and forge new ones before Hybern would strike. So he made a bargain with Hybern to, first of all, get his fiancée back, who he thought was being tormented in an enemy court, and give his people immunity. All the while, he knew that being close to Hybern could give him valuable information for the fight against Hybern when the time came. And he did get that valuable information that will serve the Prythian side well. Would it be nice to keep the ruse going until the last possible moment? Sure. Is saving Feyre in this moment dangerous for his people? Maybe, though they're already in the process of being evacuated to the Summer Court, so at least that's good. At least I'm assuming they are, because he did go back to Hybern, but anyway, we're just going to assume the best here. And now Tamlin will be able to rally what forces he can to fight against Hybern without being all sneaky with Hybern here. So all in all, I guess I just wanted to highlight that because yes, I am absolutely, Team Rhys, of course, and Tamlin made some very, very bad decisions, including this deal with Hybern in the first place. And there's a bigger picture here that Feyre and us readers have not really been able to see until this moment and be able to look at the bargain as a whole. Anyway, enough about Tamlin, because thanks to him and his wind, Feyre is flying away to be able to reach outside the wards. Her back and body are screaming in protest. This is the hardest thing she has ever physically done, but mind over matter. It's like when we've done like the coal walk, where like Nicole and I have both done fire walks where you literally walk across burning hot coals and you don't burn yourself because you're literally thinking to yourself, cool Maas, and you trick yourself into not burning. Anyway, this is also just like Nefel, who beat the odds stacked against her when she carried Miriam and flew to safety when it wasn't supposed to be possible. Her greatest weakness, her small wings, ended up being her greatest strength in a moment of desperate need, because only she was able to move through these small pathways and no one else would have been able to if their wings were bigger. The same goes for Feyre in this instance. Every moment that she trained was somehow, some way working toward this. Like fate knew she needed to train to have the ability to fly even just a little bit to get outside the wards here. And one could argue, in fact, Feyre argues this, that Tamlin was her weakness, who embodied her past trauma and way of thinking that she struggled to move on from. He was the Night Court's weakness at the High Lords meeting as he spewed hatred and doubt about them. But here he is, still loving her, still protecting her, even when it is to help her get back to her new family and her mate. In this moment, his lingering love and devotion to her has turned out to be a strength when it has been a weakness for these past few books. The wards, however, are employed by Hybern and are like, nah, you are not getting through. They try to contain our crew, but Feyre's got Helian's spell cleaving power, so she rips a hole through the wards and they fly through. Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!
They are not the only ones getting away, though. After Tamlin sends a wind towards Feyre, he creates one of his own while the king was distracted with Feyre and Azriel and co. getting outside the wards. Tam Bear Pig leaps far and wide, much farther than a beast should be able to. I believe I can fly. That's all I can think during this. And he makes it through the hole that Feyre has created and winnows away. Feyre will wonder later where he winnows off to, and I had the same question. While we never get full confirmation, we can assume he winnowed to the Autumn Court since he shows up to battle with Eris, Baron, and Grayson. And I don't think he winnowed to Grayson's estate, his BFF Grayson. I don't think he went there. Which is actually still surprising, though, that he went to Baron, considering they're not really on the best of terms. But I guess since they were both kind of like iffy in the High Lords meeting, maybe he went to Baron to convince him to fully battle during the end.
He's the one who literally grabbed Baron and was like, nope, you're coming with us, bud, because he knows that this battle is happening really, really soon.
Yeah. All right. Points for Tamlin. Good points for Tamlin.
Yes,
good
indeed.
job, Tam Bear Pig.
Yes.
Back in the Illyrian camp, it's time to get Azriel to a healer immediately. But with only one quick pause, Elaine, feeling extra grateful after being rescued, rises up on her toes and kisses Azriel's cheek. These two are really coming together in a way that we have not seen him in this series so far for this mission. Like we mentioned about Grayson, he was everything that she thought she wanted in a partner, both from her mother and everything she taught her growing up, and just from what Elaine was primed to be. It was the knight in shining armor, ready to save the damsel in distress. Elaine was quite literally in distress, but who actually saved her? Azriel. But even though he saved her, she had these moments of taking charge. She instructed Briar to grab on! She kicked the Naga Beast Hound thing off of Azriel. They had so much camaraderie. They really worked together as a team in this mission. So a thank you kiss seems very appropriate, which I'm really excited to see. I'm not shipping either Azriel and Elaine or Lucian and Elaine. I'm really actually going much more towing the line here. But the more and more we've deep dived this book, the more and more I've been like, wow, I actually do see why people are so passionate about Azriel and Elaine and shipping them hard. This is also the show don't tell for us readers that Azriel is slowly falling out of love with Mor. Now, does that mean he's falling in love with Elaine right now? Maybe not yet, maybe not at all. We don't know. But this is the showing that someone is finally taking his attention away from the woman he's been pining for 500 years. Thank God. I'm so happy. First up, to greet Feyre, Azriel, and Elaine and the Child of the Blessed is Rhys, followed very quickly by Nesta. As Feyre is reaching out for her mate, Nesta runs up and instead of going straight for Elaine like we would expect, she goes straight for Feyre. And sobbing, she thanks her over and over again. This is just so quietly a big moment for these two and their friendship and their sister kinship. Prior, Nesta would have only run to Elaine and asked if she's all right, laser focused on her well-being over Feyre's. But here she is showing her appreciation for what Feyre did and risked as a result, rather than only relief that her favorite sister is back. It is also the shifting of the sisterly bond going from Nesta and Elaine versus Feyre to the three of these sisters being a unit together. Once everyone has been tended to, the three of them lay down on the bearskin rug and have this huge cuddle session. There's this great sisterly quote from journalist Carol Seitling, quote, "Sisters function as safety nets in a chaotic world simply by being there for each other." These Archeron sisters have not always been the safety nets for each other. Nesta has been laser focused on protecting Elaine. Elaine was coddled into learned helplessness that she's finally unlearning. And Feyre was a kayak, hear her roar, solely paddling her family away to safety. But because that was their relationship does not mean that they're allowed to change. Speaking for ourselves, Lexi and I have not always been besties. That is the nicest way I can put it. But although through our own journeys, we've come closer and closer together through over the years. And now, much like these Archeron sisters, we are the safety nets for each other in this chaotic world. Or at least you're my safety net, big sister.
So are you, Nicole. That was beautiful.
I love you.
I love you too. This scene where the Archeron sisters, they lay together, holding each other for comfort, is one of my favorite subtle moments of the series. Because like you were saying, it reflects that sisterly love, no matter your differences. And that at the end of the day, they care so deeply for each other. And this moment, it's such a callback to what life used to be like when it was just the three of them. And now they are actually seeking that out, cherishing it like they never used to. Hours later in the day, Kallias's army arrives. And I would like to just take a moment to describe how cool the Winter Court is. They're so cool. Get it?
I'm surprised.
Oh my God. I know, it's so funny. Anyway, his court's forces are made up of high fae and more lesser fairies than anyone else, excluding the Illyrians, because remember, they don't count as lesser fae. The Winter Court brought tall, long-limbed creatures like shards of ice given form. Their wagons are hauled by reindeer. They have giant white bears in ornate armor that seems so aware that Feyre wouldn't be surprised if they could talk. And this is the best part. The Winter Court has white foxes scuttling about, delivering messages strapped to their little embroidered vests.
I have a quick thing for all the Quicksilver readers. All I can think of is Onyx in this moment. If you know, you know. Protect Onyx!
This army was held together by Vivian during Amarantha's reign, hidden thanks to Kallias's power shielding their location. And this army is complex and beautiful, orderly but still thrumming with life. Everyone has a purpose and does it efficiently and proudly. I love the Winter Court so much! I love it, I love it, I love it. We also learn that Briar, the child of the blessed they saved from Hybern, has been taken under Vivian's wing. This feels very fitting for Vivian, who welcomed refugees to their hidden location during Amarantha's reign, and she does have a soft spot for humans, unlike her mate. She is warm and friendly, understanding and empathetic to those who need help. Oh, and the Winter Court Fae are less scary than the Illyrians because they have fuzzy animals. Fair. Absolutely fair. Not everybody's all about the bats, even if we all love the Bat Boys. Anyway,
I love a fuzzy animal. I want to snuggle with one of those giant bears and have them talk to me. That sounds lovely. It is time, though, to resolve a friend fight. Moore takes Feyre to the tree line at the border of the camp, far away from prying ears. And Moore admits that she was terrified for Feyre and Azriel and that they might not come back from the Hybern mission, which is a very real possibility, and they almost didn't. And if that were the case, she would have never been able to make things right between her and Feyre. When you're in a fight with someone, anyone, a friend, a family member, a partner, there's this like unsettled feeling you have in your gut. That feeling doesn't tend to go away unless you sit down and close it out with apologies and or coming to common ground. If Feyre had died in Hybern, Moore would never have gotten to get this closure. And more importantly, she would never have been able to tell Feyre why those words hit her so hard. Let's get into it.
There can come a point in life where we realize it's truly time to make serious money moves. For instance, this past year, my husband and I zoned in on meeting our financial goals to pay down debt and take care of our family in a way that really didn't feel attainable not so long ago. Take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no maintenance or monthly fees, getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposits, and having access to over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Plus, one of my favorite things about Chime is that it helps you make progress with fee-free overdraft up to $200 with your next deposit applied to your balance. Hey, we've all been there with an overdraft, and Chime ensures you don't need to stress about it with its Spot Me feature. So Chime spots you on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals and never charges fees or interest for using Spot Me. Make your fall finances a little greener by working toward your financial goals with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/fantasyfangirl. That's chime.com/fantasyfangirl. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. members FDIC. Spot Me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in Spot Me and are subject to monthly limits. Terms and conditions apply. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. All right, everyone. It's time for Moore to share her big secret. I know we've been talking about it on the pod a lot, but here it is right on the page revealed. She doesn't love Azriel in a romantic way because she prefers females. Yes, she finds pleasure in both males and females. However, Moore has known since she was little more than a child that she is attracted to and cares more for females on a soul deep level. She goes,
"Get it, my bisexual queen!"
Yes! She goes on to share that being open about this in the Hewn City would have never been allowed because all they care about is breeding their bloodlines and making alliances through marriage. People like her are hated by the hewn city and considered selfish for not passing on the bloodline. If she was able to follow her heart's desire while under her father's rule, she would not be able to produce offspring, and therefore Kyr's line would end with her. So Mor, understandably, never breathed a word of her true preferences. She slept with Cassian all those centuries ago to avoid being bred like a prized mare and have a shot at freedom instead. She chose Cassian because she knew it would mean little to him too. Even back then, she knew how Azriel felt about her, so she didn't feel using him for this possible marriage escape would be fair to him. By her choosing Cassian, though, Azriel deemed himself unsuitable. But then, after she was left in the Autumn Court Woods and Az found her, he started to confess his love for her. And to get him to stop, Mor turned and left. And ever since, she hasn't been able to face explaining the truth to him or to the others. To this day, she sleeps with males, yes, because she enjoys it, but more so to keep people from looking too closely. It's especially a way to keep Azriel from wondering why she won't notice him. During the war 500 years ago on the continent, she was far enough away from everyone she knew, and she was jealous of what Nefel and her now wife shared, the openness to love who they truly desired. So Mor dared to try herself and fell in love with one of the human queens, Andromache. This was the ancestor of the Golden Queen, who snuck the Book of Breathings to our inner circle and died because of it. But as a queen, Andromache needed to continue her royal line. So Mor went home after the last battle, and then the wall came up. She realized her mistake and knew she wanted to spend whatever time they had for Andromache's mortal life. But Mor couldn't get through the wall by that time. It was too late. She tried for 3 years until she finally found a hole to cross through. But by then, Andromache was married with a child and another on the way. This human queen ended up having 5 children and died an old woman safe in her bed. Mor mourned her for a long time, unable to take any lovers for several decades. Eventually she did, and throughout the centuries, the female lovers she has had have always been in secret. But when Mor can't be open about their relationships, it wears on them and they end it soon enough. Ultimately, Mor loves Azriel too much to try to be with him in a romantic way and knows she'll never be able to love him like he deserves. And similarly, she loves herself enough to know she deserves to find true happiness and love too. She doesn't want to settle. Whew. Okay, everybody, that is a big download. So let's talk about it. Because as a fandom, including us fantasy fangirls, there are some complicated feelings out there. I'll start by saying it isn't fair to place the full burden on Mor to talk to Azriel. He is responsible for not trying to share his feelings with her to prompt this necessary conversation. Like Mor told us, he tried once 500 years ago, but wrong time, buddy, after everything Mor had just gone through. That was once 500 years ago. After all these centuries, there is no excuse for not trying to bring it up again from his end. In many ways, he has let this fester for so long. Yes. Because he doesn't think he deserves happiness as much as he wants it, and he puts Mor on a pedestal in the process. With that said, it is also not fair that Mor has not had the conversation she knows she needs to have with Azriel about how she doesn't love him in that way. Instead, she is relying entirely on communicating it to him through her actions, like sleeping with other males, and she leans on Cassian being the buffer. She is the only one between her and Azriel who has the full context of the situation. And I'll be honest, that is on her because he is so many things, but he is not a mind reader. She admits that she likes things the way that they are, which means that she is okay with Azriel continuing to want her. She is waiting for him to get over her so she doesn't have to face the confrontation and reveal her secret. And in the meantime, she is using sex with others to discourage Azriel and pretends she doesn't notice his love for her, which affects everybody in the inner circle.
I mean, I 100% agree with you. And I want to really quickly start by saying Mor's situation where she is fearing her secret getting out, the complicated feelings that we have around this is nothing around her sharing her secret
Exactly.
outright.
Yes.
That is her secret to share. And sadly, a lot of people in this world, like we read fantasy so often to disassociate, to feel, like, oh my gosh, like I can, have all these powers and I can have all these different things. But we also read it for the human experience. And this is a very real human experience that people are still experiencing on a daily basis. So we entirely sympathize with Moore from a position of her not wanting to share her secret and her wanting to keep that for the reasons that she does, especially when it comes to the Hewn City. Separately, the way she treats her family around her actions for hiding the secret. That's more where the complicated feelings coming from. Her wanting to keep things the way that they are is understandable, again, given that she does not want to share her secret. But given that she loves Cassian and Azriel like family, secret or not, her wanting to keep things the way that they are, which includes sleeping with males, to send messages to Azriel, it's not the way you would expect someone who's 500 years old to act. Maybe if she was 20, I'd be down to like, say, oh, she's young. Like this is, like it's a high school way of dealing with it. Again, her actions, not her wanting to keep her secret. We also do not know the entire story yet. As we've called out on the podcast, there is some sus stuff going on with Eris and his role in this. So I also feel like without the full context, it's really hard for us to read this situation in the way that we want to. All of that is true. And it is simultaneously true that she is toying with both Azriel and even Cassian's emotions as well. I mean, she slept with Helion knowing it would directly hurt Azriel. That's not something you would do to someone you love and cherish like she's saying she does.
So we've shared our feelings on the Azriel front. Like Nicole was saying, it really is very much two separate conversations that we are having here. So those are our issues with this whole plot line. Now, I want to shift perspective and acknowledge why we truly do understand why Moore chooses not to reveal her secret to anyone. As much as I genuinely wish she and Az had better communication and maturity about their dynamic, so this hasn't had to drag on for 500 years, I also have a deep appreciation for Moore keeping this a secret because it's not so much about hiding the truth from Azriel as it is about her not feeling ready or willing to release this one small part of her in general. And that boundary deserves respect and acceptance. And Nicole and I both absolutely acknowledge that. She's terrified of her secret getting back to her family in the Hewn City. That's why she really hates the idea of them coming to Valaris, because this is her safe haven, and their visitations welcome even a sliver of a chance of them finding out. Maybe they track her down and go to Rita's and learn, because Rita's is especially a safe haven for people like her. The owner is also like her. Her terror of her family learning this truth that she prefers females is the driving force to why she keeps a secret. And it's evolved into every other aspect of her life, like how she chooses to hide it from her chosen family, including Azriel. So I don't like how she has handled the situation with Azriel, and it's much bigger than Az. It's about who Moore is at her core, and that is what Feyre and the reader is learning in this scene.
As Feyre is taking in this information from Moore, we get a wave of, oh my God, I never even considered this as a possibility. As I mentioned earlier, Feyre has a bit of I know better than you attitude, especially when it comes to the relationship drama between Moore, Cassian, and Azriel. And here she's realizing how incredibly off and judgy she was. You know what happens when you assume Feyre darling. But Feyre's not done meddling, though, because whenever Moore is ready, which I love that she included that, that's very important, Feyre is all too excited to play matchmaker. And at least what I love is that Moore, there's that line about like Moore's smile was brighter than the day court. Like I love like Moore just having that, you can almost feel the weight lifting off her shoulders. And like Moore deserves that. She really does. Like holding the secret in for so long, I can't even imagine the burden that that's caused her. And I love that Moore is so game for her meddling friend to play matchmaker. It's
like because she's never had that before. And it's like, oh my gosh, like that's really special. Like I can just feel it. And it's almost like she can start envisioning a future where that is a possibility. And telling Feyre is the first step of her being able to talk about that.
Well, and I'll even say like coming out as bisexual on my end, like I was nervous. I was not like, I knew that I was going to have nothing but love and support from people, but it was still a little scary. And there's almost this element of like, you're second guessing everything. And to have that love and acceptance in those wide open arms, like, it's just like, okay, I can be myself with this person. Like that feels really, really good.
Yeah.
Feyre
I gave you a big hug.
You did. Yes. You gave me the biggest hug. I loved it. Feyre does bring up that if Moore chooses to tell the inner circle, they would have nothing but that same love and support and Lexi big bear hugs. But it does beg the question, all of the inner circle we know would be very supportive of her sexuality. They can be like just like Lexi and I have expressed, they can be simultaneously very supportive of her coming out and also question her choices that she's made along the way. Reese, I think, would just be thrilled that the air is cleared and that they can be done with this. I really think he would just be like, oh my God, we can move on. Yes. Amryn, I'm pretty sure we just discussed, like, I'm pretty sure she already knows based on her comment earlier. I think Cassian would be just thrilled and supportive, very much along like the Reese of just like, oh my God, yes, this makes so much sense. But it does make me wonder what Azriel's reaction would be. Again, I 1000% believe that he would be supportive of her sexuality. That's different. But do you think that he would be hurt that she strung him along?
Yes. For 500 years? I know I would be like, oh my goodness. Yeah. I also think he does know in some way, and it would be a sense of closure. He needs that so badly. And until he has the full context, like I was saying earlier, he can't get that closure with Mor. Even as he is starting to move on, there's not that closure yet. And he needs that for himself before I think he can really and truly fall head over heels in love with someone else.
It does make me wonder when we do get his POV book, which we both do agree that it's probably going to be next, although we don't have that confirmed. Are we going to get moments where that lust and that love of 500 years for Mor comes back to the surface?
I think that we will get a lot of his feelings of inadequacy. Why didn't she love me back? And that has really weighed on his self-identity all these centuries. And but
don't worry, Mor really respects him, and she views him as family.
Exactly, and that goes right back to it's like, yes, we know that you love him like a brother, and yet you are purposefully putting him in this position of questioning himself and his self-worth, and he is not going to get that closure until he learns that it's not him, it's her. And so I don't think he's going to be able to fully love someone else and give all of himself and trust it until he knows that it hasn't been him this whole time.
Yeah. I do have another question, though, because do you think the inner circle is going to find out sometime?
Yes.
I agree. When? Like, do we think it's going to be in the next ACOWAR, or is it going to be in a future book that's more focused? We do know we're getting a few more novellas. I really hope Mor's love story is not in a novella. Like,
me too. This
book already on the representation train is on the lower end, at least of books that we've read. It would make me so sad if the one like on the page gay relationship we're going to get, at least from assuming the one gay relationship we're going to get on the page, if that was in the novella. Like, I want a full 500 pages plus of a woman-on-woman relationship, please.
So I do think that there will be something in the next book. And of course, there's a lot that needs to happen. There are so many loose ends with ACOWAR that I have no idea how this is going to happen in one book. So understanding that we are probably going to get some closure with a few other loose ends. And then this will also maybe like start a few new plot lines, you know? Yeah. I could see Mor starting something with someone and feeling like it's finally time to share that so that she can be open in this relationship, that she meets someone who she wants to introduce to her family, especially as everybody else is getting mated here, right? I also think with Azriel catching feelings for Elaine or even Gwyn down the line, whoever that might be, it will take the pressure off Mor with this big reveal. Like, instead, it'll be telling a good friend, like her brother versus a hopeful lover. And I think that's really going to help.
Oh my God, I did not think about that. Yes, that right there. But that also brings me to another question. Who do we think Mor's lover is going to, or love interest is going to be in a future book? Do we think we've met them? Yes, Lexi.
So I really do think that it is going to be Emery, but I know that you have a few other ideas. So I just need to say that, and then I'll go into my reasons why.
Well, you and I both think it's definitely going to be Emery. But I will say, before her and Feyre go off and have this download on the tree line, Mor is talking to Vivian's sister, cousin, someone who looks like Vivian, and they seem to be having a kind of ish moment. Mor whispers something in her ear and she smiles, but that smile very quickly fades away as people walk by. It seems very, sneaky. But then Mor is watching her face very, very carefully. Then as Vivian's possible sister looks back at Mor then looks away. This seems like this, in high school where like you have a crush and you're just like, I don't know, you were always really good at flirting. I was terrible at flirting. And like, you'd like, and then you like look away and be like, that was so stupid. Why did I say that? Like, this seems like a moment where maybe Mor tried to flirt and maybe like to see if this woman was interested, or maybe they have a history. I don't know, but I don't think we're going to get any more with this Vivian possible sister, Winter Mystery Court woman, but it's fun to think about. Let's get into Emery, though, because this is definitely like the highest possibility. From A Court of Silver Flames, quote, Emery sighed, nodding towards Mor. I always forget how beautiful she is. She never comes to Windhaven these days. Nesta could have sworn pink stole over Emery's brown cheeks. Oh, I would love if a member of Nesta's chosen family ends up with a member of the Inner Circle, like intertwining them. I know Cassian and Nesta are already intertwining, but just another level would just make me so happy.
Me too, especially because of the issues between Nesta and Mor. Yes, they do kind of make up for it by the end of Silver Flames and whatnot, but there is always going to be some tension between them. And for Mor to end up with one of Nesta's best friends, like you were saying, intertwines them even more. And Emery, she also does have a difficult past as well. And I could really see her and Mor bonding over their really difficult pasts as well.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we'll talk so much more about this in Silver Flames, but I am like 1,000,000,000% shipping Mor and Emery.
And I'll even say, like, yes, mates are supposed to be super rare, and we as a fandom kind of give SJM a hard time about like how everyone is getting mated. This is one scenario where like I am begging, please give Mor a mate. Yes. Like, I want a full-blown mate trope on the page. I really want that, and I want it to be Emery so bad.
There are some things in life that are okay to take a chance on, like trying a new type of milk in your coffee, or mixing it up with a new takeout spot, or rolling the dice on a new workout class. Finding the right doctor, on the other hand, should not be a risk. Luckily, ZocDoc's got you covered. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, and much, much more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. Huzzah! We at Fantasy Fangirls use ZocDoc for our booking needs, and you should too. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/FF to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/FF. ZocDoc.com/FF. There are some things in life that are okay to take a chance on, like trying a new type of milk in your coffee, or mixing it up with a new takeout spot, or rolling the dice on a new workout class. Finding the right doctor, on the other hand, should not be a risk. Luckily, ZocDoc's got you covered. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, and much, much more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. Huzzah! We at Fantasy Fangirls use ZocDoc for our booking needs, and you should too. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/FF to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/FF. ZocDoc.com/FF. All right. Whew. Okay. That's a lot to unpack. Now let's pivot back to the war because, friends, we have a final battle to plan. Now that their allies are here at the northern Summer Court border, the full Prythian army is as ready as they'll be to engage Hybern. Even Feyre is ready to retrieve Bryaxis for this final showdown, which, don't forget, she's been holding off and waiting until the last moment, the big battle, to show her monster card to Hybern and catch them by surprise for once. But we have one tiny problem. Hybern's army has moved from that western border location our friends knew about. How our crew knows they did under the invisible spells the king has cast, I don't know. I suppose when our people know where to spy, there's bound to be, like a slip up here and there moving a 100,000 soldier army. Anyway, I'm not going to lie, friends. This scene is a little confusing to follow, so I'm going to do my best to highlight just the key takeaways. Hybern is moving east along the human border, straight across the island of Prythian. Like I mentioned a few moments ago, they have been on the west side because, Hybern came from the west, and now they are marching straight across towards the eastern coast. But our crew doesn't think it's for a continent ally to meet on the eastern coast, since we know at least the human queens haven't rallied their armies as they wait for Hybern to arrive to the continent after destroying Prythian. Basically, the continent allies are waiting for Hybern to get to them, and then they'll all meet up to overrule the continent together.
I could totally see Hybern sending a message to his continent ally friends and just being like, "Mwahaha, I have Prythian in the bag. Don't even bother coming until it's continent time." That's my headcanon.
Our crew comes to the conclusion that Hybern is delaying the battle for Prythian with them. He was going to move north and push the court's forces toward the middle, but he's changed plans and now intends to march across the human lands. So the big question is, why? Well, he's been insulted by the Archeron sisters, of course. No, seriously, that's the reason. The king's focus now is on butchering the humans to spite the Archerons instead of first meet the courts in battle like he originally planned.
Pause! This dude has basically been planning this war for 500 years, and 3 20-year-olds piss him off, and he's like, "We must make haste!"
And apparently this is on brand for the King of Hybern from those who knew him during the last war. He is
Get him in therapy, please.
He is psychotic enough to wield the might of his army just to get revenge on 3 women. After all, Feyre killed his priestess and his niece and nephew and tricked his ravens, amongst other things that she didn't mention in this explanation. Nesta took from the Cauldron, so it's no longer working at full power, and stealing Elaine back was the final insult. And as interesting as this plot point is, I'll say that ultimately I'm making myself kind of go along with it for storytelling purposes. I'm sorry, I still can't take this seriously.
I know.
The Archerons have been an unexpected thorn in the king's side, and he thinks himself superior to these humans turned Fae. He continually underestimates them, and it'll be oh so sweet when Elaine and Nessa take him down in the final battle. He wants them to know that they are the reason all the humans are going to die, and he wants them to be alive to suffer through knowing this is their fault. Now, is this a little short-sighted of the king? Absolutely, as he will learn. And wasn't he going to invade the human lands before the Archeron sisters insulted him? Yes, he was, just a little bit later. The only way I can justify this storytelling is that now he wants the Archeron sisters to experience this loss, like I said, versus die before he marches across the human lands. But would it make more sense that his motives for moving east are to instead meet with allies and just annihilate the humans on the way? Yes. Yes, it would. SJM.
Yes, it would. Oh, shit. Now, the King of Hybern also knows his enemy very, very well. And he knows that if he goes and just slashes across the human lands, Rhys, Feyre, and Co. will all come to fight. So this is kind of him being like, "You've insulted me one last time, the Archeron." So I don't know. I have an easier time believing it. But yes, it does make more sense if he was going to meet up with allies. But also then he would be way too large of a host to take over in the last battle. I don't know. Cauldron boil me.
Yeah, cauldron boil me. Anyway, this doesn't leave the courts with many options. Hybern knows they'll come to protect the humans because he knows that the Archerons care about the humans and that they're important enough to convince the rest of the courts to help the humans. So the king is luring the Prythian forces to him instead of having to go north to them. Which, boom, there's another great reason for him to be doing what he's doing that isn't about feeling insulted by the Archeron sisters. He can still feel insulted by them, but there are other reasons for him to be marching east here as well. But if the courts take their force to Hybern's gigantic army, aren't they going to be outnumbered? Yes. Aren't they going to be exhausted from all the winnowing and traveling to Hybern's location? Yes. So doesn't that mean things won't end well for them? Yes. But they'll die bravely, and that makes it worth it. As Rhys says, quote, "It is a new world, and we must decide how we are to end this old one and begin it anew. We must decide if we will begin it by allowing those who cannot defend themselves to be slaughtered. If that is the sort of people we are, not individual courts, we as a Fae people, do we let the humans stand alone?" What a pretty speech, Rhys. But in all seriousness, the High Lords and their comrades are coming together to fight for what is good, what is right, even if it means they will die in the process. Better to die fighting for this better world than step aside and let the horror take over. That is really what ACOWAR is about, putting aside differences as Fae and humans and focusing on the world that they choose to live in that embodies peace and freedom.
Stay tuned for episode 11, where we will spend half of an episode talking about that exact topic.
So they're going to do exactly what Hybern expects them to do. Come to the human lands and fight for the humans, to do everything in their power to save this people and Prythian, and most likely die in the process. But first, to save as many humans as possible, they are going to evacuate them from their towns and winnow as many of them to Adriata as they can. Yes, it will deplete their magic, but every life matters, and losing strength and magic by saving lives is always worth it.
So I have another question. What happens if things go poorly? I know, well, no, because they are thinking that way. They're expecting things to go poorly. They will most likely, like they're thinking, lose in this battle. So then what happens to all those humans that they spent all of their magic winnowing to the summer court? Like, Hybern is just going to traipse across Prythian and bad things will happen to all of them. So, like, I guess what I'm saying is they already think that they're screwed for this battle. So they're making themselves more screwed, and then the humans are going to die or become slaves anyway?
Sort of, yes. But okay, so here's how I think of it. Hybern might not pay much attention to the rest of Prythian until it takes over the continent too. So as long as the High Lords and their armies are out of the way, a bunch of human evacuees in a summer court city aren't going to be an issue until he conquers the world. And then they'll be slaves. So is it just kind of buying them some time to hope that things might work out in the bigger picture? Yes. Or even, for our crew to be able to hinder Hybern's army enough to stop him from going to the continent, to at least it's like this heroic march to fight Hybern when they know that they are going to lose. They're just trying to buy time.
Okay. I'm at peace. Thank you. I needed that because I was I'm not saying leave the humans to die. I'm not saying that. But I was a little bit like, no matter what, everyone's screwed. So why would you do the one that also depletes your magic and makes you an even bigger threat for this battle tomorrow? But that makes more sense.
It's the idea of at least now the humans have a small chance of living in the long term versus absolutely being the first to die. Yep.
Maybe I'm being very Thesan about this because I feel like I'm there's no emotion. I'm like, well, why would you do that logically?
I mean, I'm the same way too. But okay, so let's talk about that because you know what? Not all the High Lords initially agree with this plan. Bringing back...
Understandably.
Yeah, understandably. It brings back the reoccurring theme of us versus them between the Fae and humans. Kallias, in particular, thinks that this would be a waste of magic. Why save...
Same, Kallias.
Which you're kind of right here. Where is Thesan in all of this?
I need my extremely, factual guy. Where'd he go?
Kallias in particular thinks, why save a few human lives when they need to reserve their power to try to save the world?
Thank you.
Really good question.
I'm not saying the humans aren't worth it. Save the lives.
Well, okay, so then that's where Feyre makes a good point that every single life is worth saving, just like hers had been when she was a human. And look at her. She's already changed the world and saved their sorry asses from Amarantha. Quote, they are not a waste, not to me or to you. I love how she's like, sit the fuck down, Khalees. I'm telling you how you feel. Personally, I don't think this reflects terribly on Kallias, even speaking, as a human myself who really prizes every life. He is practical and looking at the bigger picture, like Nicole and I apparently are. He has no connection to the humans. He's not doing this with malicious intent toward the humans, like, say, Baron would, but it's more like, well, too bad for them. We need to focus on the greater good. But he is mated to Vivian, who, like Feyre, is like, sit the fuck down. And Cleus grumbles an apology. See, so he's got different priorities and knows how to be swayed.
But hope is not lost because Amren comes in and thumps I wrote Book of Breathings, but I abbreviated it to Bob, so I'm only going to be calling it Bob now. So she thumps the Bob on the She thumps the Bob on the table. Good thing we're all planning on going to battle because a field trip to the Cauldron is necessary. Not everyone, though, just the 4 made people, because Amren, using the Suriel's second and penultimate pages clue, has found a way to beat the entirety of Hybern's army.
Huzzah!
At least that's what she's telling them, because she tells them here that she needs the 4 made bodies to get the Cauldron under control. And in one fell swoop, they can harness the power that might bind the king and his army, wiping them off the face of the earth. And by dividing this spell between the 4 of them and draining the 4 of them of their magic reserves, it will not drain them to death. Hooray! Remember Feyre, she would have died if it was just her draining it with the Bob earlier when she was back at Hybern at the end of ACOWAR. However, Amren's lying through her teeth right now. As we will learn in the final battle, on the second and penultimate pages is a spell to unbind Amren from her body. Therefore, will wipe the army off the map. There is no spell to bind the king and his army with the 4 sisters and the Cauldron. So why doesn't Amren just say that here? Well, for one, there is no guarantee that the other High Lords would sign off on this. I think Amren would do what she wants, just in general, but that wedge between the High Lords would not be good for the group. Amren is also a very scary monster who many people fear. So hearing, hey, I'm going to go unleash myself, might not go over very well. Also, Rhys and the Inner Circle might try to find ways to stop her from sacrificing herself, only further delaying them and distracting them as well when they need to be laser focused.
Isn't it Rhys who initially told her that maybe there will be a spell in there to unleash her or to let her go?
Yeah,
yes.
So Rhys did call it. So like maybe Rhys wouldn't, but I do think that it would like it saying goodbye, like knowing that she would not be coming back, or at least assuming she would not be coming back. It would it would distract the soldiers on the field. So instead, she thinks, what is the one thing they want more than anything? To stop Hybern's army. I'm going to dangle this carrot in front of them so there's no argument against the plan. It's kind of smart. Like, I'm not going to lie.
Such an Amren move, too.
It is such an Amren move. I love her.
So they jump into action with part 1 of their plan. Every High Lord in the army, any commander or noble with the gift and strength to winnow, take the humans to Adriata. Some of the humans are willing, some not. Lots of minds infiltrated, but again, for the good cause. And then part 2 is rest for a few hours before heading into Hybern's trap for them. Feyre watches Rhys sleep and worries so much for her mate, knowing that he will be the first to sacrifice himself and protect. They all know that the odds are stacked against them, even with Amren's spell for the Cauldron, even with Bryaxis, even with 5 out of the 7 court's armies. A lot of people are going to die tomorrow. Feyre, Amren, Nesta, and Elaine will go to the Cauldron, but only when the battle is at its peak, because that's the best chance for the King of Hybern to be distracted from the Cauldron. And that's when they'll have to take control and annihilate the enemy forces. But a lot will happen before they even have the chance to do that. And the Prythian armies will be fighting to buy them time to get to the Cauldron at the right moment. These armies are willing to do it. They're willing to lay down their lives for the chance at a better world. And especially Rhys. And knowing this about her mate, Feyre knows that she has one more card to play, the attempt to get the Ouroboros mirror, risk losing herself in the process, but at least maybe they can get the Bone Carver to aid in their cause, which would be a huge win. She's been avoiding this high risk, high reward course of action because it previously wasn't worth going insane for. But now, knowing that it's likely they will all die tomorrow, and it's very, very likely Rhys and her friends will die before she can get to the Cauldron, she has nothing left to lose. From her perspective, she needs to do everything in her power to give them every possible advantage in this oncoming battle where, no matter what, they are the underdogs. Quote, Rhys, had given enough. And if this broke me, drove me mad, ripped me apart, all Amren would need was my presence, my body, tomorrow for the Cauldron. Anything else, if it was what I had to give, my own cost to buy them any sliver of survival, I would gladly pay it, face it. Fae-vorite is so similar to Rhys in that she is willing to sacrifice herself for the greater good. And in this way, she's beating him to it in hopes that it can help save his life tomorrow on the battlefield. Plus, she may be fully aware of the risk that she won't walk away from the mirror with her sanity, but she has also gotten quite the pep talk from the Suriel recently. Quote, "Only you can decide what breaks you, Cursebreaker. Only you." She is going to take this risk, yes, but she is also going in with hope that maybe, just maybe, she can succeed because only she can decide what breaks her.
Entering the chamber in the Court of Nightmares with the mirror, Fae-vorite immediately sees snow glittering over the walls and the floor, and on the far end of this cold, wind-blasted chamber is the Ouroboros mirror. A massive round disc over 5.5 feet tall, the metal frame around the mirror is fashioned with a massive serpent reaching over around the circumference of the mirror to devour its own tail. Get it, my guy! The Ouroboros in our human realm is a symbol from ancient Egyptian iconography and Greek magical tradition. The Ouroboros is often interpreted as a symbol for eternal renewal or the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It is most commonly based off a rat snake that is known for consuming themselves. Yummy. The snake biting its own tail is also a fertility symbol in some religions. The tail is a phallic symbol, nice, and the mouth is a womb-like symbol. As Fae-vorite calls it here, it is the mirror of beginnings and endings. I love this because our story began back in ACOWAR in the middle of cold winter, with the opening line of the book being, quote, "The forest had become a labyrinth of snow and ice." So it feels so appropriate that Fae-vorite faces herself, faces the quote-unquote end, the end of the world, the end of Fae-vorite as we know her, nearing the end of our story just in her head. It feels so appropriate that this is surrounded by an environment that was her beginning. Fae-vorite continues stepping towards this mirror, and at first she only sees herself, not a monster, just a reflection, to the point where it's almost like, that's it? Is there a button I need to push? Until, quote, "Up close, the surface of the Ouroboros was like a gray, calm sea, undisturbed, sleeping, but in its upper corner, movement. And thus begins a horror show. Crawling down the sides of a snowy wall is a massive beast of claws, scales, fur, and shredding teeth. And it's crawling directly towards Fae-vorite. At first, Fae-vorite thinks it's a guardian of the mirror, and it's not until she whirls on it, turning away from the mirror to fight the animal, is she realizes the beast is her. Quote, "Where I had been standing, that beast now sat, scaled tail idly swishing through the snow, watching me." This scaled, furry beast is what lurks beneath her skin and who she truly is at her core. I also wonder if this is her, I'll call it High Lady beast, with how each of the High Lords have like a beast lurking beneath their skin. And Rhys regularly refers to his as he doesn't like it. This might be why. It's the like darkest version of him. Is this the darkest version of each of the High Lords? Is that their beast form? Maybe, maybe not, especially given what Helian's one is. Go for it.
I don't know if this necessarily has to be the darkest version of themselves, but I think that it is very much an inner part of them that they may or may not like to tap into. I absolutely think that this is her High Lady beast within herself. It's like there's also a little bit of both Tamlin and absolutely Rhysand in her beast form. Claw watch, everybody! Scales down its back. We even have black and gold fur. It's really interesting how it comes together like that too.
Well, and Tamlin has been such a huge part of her journey. Rhys has obviously been such a huge part of her making of who she is now. Like, it makes sense that there's elements of them because of how impactful they've been on her life. Later, we will learn exactly what goes down in this chamber. So I'm stealing a little bit from chapter 69 here. She will cower.
Sorry.
Lexi. She will cower at the beast, rage at it, vomit, weep, and even claw at herself at the mirror. All before she curls up and, quote, "Trembling at every horrific and cruel and selfish thing I beheld within that monster, within me. But I had kept watching. I did not turn from it." After who knows how long, she finally stops shaking and instead turns to study it. Quote, "The pride and hypocrisy and the shame, the rage and the cowardice and the hurt. Then I began to see things, more important things, more vital." Oh God, I'm getting chills. only after sitting with the most horrible parts of herself and looking past them was she able to forgive herself for the bad, for the evil, for the selfish. And instead of cowering in front of it, she learns to love it and embrace it. Remember the Suriel's words, only you can decide what breaks you, curse breaker. Fae-vorite decided that the horrible things that she's done, that she's been, that she's thought, she decided that person was still worthy of love. And only then, when she owns and embraces all that she is, did the mirror finally yield to her. Rhys will later ask her, quote, "You loved it all, the good and the bad?" To which Fae-vorite will reply, "Especially the bad." As someone who has a really hard time being nice to herself, I will say I didn't realize how badly I needed to dissect this chapter. We read fantasy to escape our reality, like I said earlier, and to fall into these magical worlds of adventure and more. But these books are so much more than just fiction. They, in many ways, hold humanity more than most of the nonfiction books I've ever read in my life put together. We've touched a lot on the truly human moments in our deep dive journey of Empyrean and, of course, of the first 3 ACOWAR books. But I don't know if I've ever been more emotionally impacted than I was reading this section with the Ouroboros. Because only after reading this, I paused for a moment when I was doing the outline, and I just kind of gave myself a metaphorical hug. And I didn't realize how much I needed that internal love and appreciation.
Me as well. Like you, I've had a really difficult time looking in the mirror in the past because I didn't like who I was, and I was really embarrassed about her, and I didn't want to face her. And it honestly, for me, wasn't until I became a mother that I looked inward for my own self-healing. And I'm still learning to love myself, the good and the bad. And honestly, these books and these character journeys have greatly helped me see myself and, more than anything, offer forgiveness and acceptance. And because I always want to be the best version of myself. And it's kind of like, well, what exactly does that mean? And being the best version of yourself is accepting that you're not perfect.
So let this be a reminder to all of us that we are not perfect. We have that beast lurking beneath our skin, holding on to the cruelest and the darkest sides of us. But it is our job to look past that beast to the person who deserves to be showered with just as much love as the best parts of us too. And just as this changes Fae-vorite as we know her forever, offering her both an ending and a new beginning, let it be that way for us readers too.
After Fae-vorite successfully claims the mirror, she enters the bone carver's cell, and he immediately knows that she retrieved it, even though it's not physically there quite yet. It makes me wonder what kind of power shift there is in her. We'll explore this a lot more when she has the ability to take on the Cauldron by herself, but that's next episode. She summons the Ouroboros because, after all, it's hers to summon whenever and wherever she wishes. Words are still foreign to her. Even her body is foreign to her as she returns to this renewed and strengthened sense of self. The bone carver, ever the questioner, like you, Nicole, asks what she saw. I love how she's like, none your business. But seriously, she doesn't know how to describe what she saw. She doesn't even know how much time has passed because time was different in the mirror. So she needs to move now before the battle. As she says, quote, "Battle awaits." And this is where we learn that the bone carver didn't truly have need for the Ouroboros mirror. The main reason he wanted it, why it was his all or nothing asking price, he wanted to see if she was worth helping. As he says, quote, "It's a rare person to face who they truly are and not run from it, not be broken by it." He is about to risk his own immortal life for a game he has no skin in. So he wants to ensure that who he fights for themselves first, believes in themselves, and is worth fighting alongside because they are unafraid. Or rather, they don't balk at the ugliest of truths, but rather face it head on and most of all, are willing to overcome it. I bet you anything the King of Hybern would not have successfully claimed that mirror.
Oh, God, no. It would have been a teeny tiny little man looking back at him. And he would have been like, oh, God.
It's implied that Feyre helps him be made, which is the only way to escape the prison, as Amren explained a while back. We will learn that the Bone Carver will take the form of an Illyrian warrior for getting out and, traveling here. And then is when he'll unleash himself and all of his monstrosity upon Hybern's army. But that's next episode, friends. Let's turn our full attention to foreshadowing important moments in the rest of this book and the rest of the series. It's getting real short here because we're getting close to the end of this book.
I was going to say moments, plural. I have one. And that is, Tarquin says to Rhys about Varian and Amren, quote, "We'll alternate who has to deal with them on holidays." It looks like Valaris got Varian for both the first and second winter solstices. So does that mean that Amren goes to the summer court for summer solstice? What I would give for that story.
That would be fun. I also feel like we talked so much about foreshadowing already during the Cauldron part that there you go, everybody.
Let's move on. It is time to sip some tea with the Suriel. Every episode, Lexi will sit down with the Suriel, grab some tea, and walk us through a world-building topic to help us better understand this world and the people in it.
Today's Suriel topic is Shadow Singers. This tea time topic won by an overwhelming vote in our Discord, and I can't say I'm surprised. So let's explain everything we know about Shadow Singers, which I'm going to be honest is not a whole lot. Shadow Singers are a special kind of fairy that have the ability to wield and control shadows. I understand it as more than a magical ability that someone has like Daemati, because being a Shadow Singer is so central to an individual's identity. But it's also not its own species of fairy by any means, like for instance a wraith. We know at least Illyrians can be Shadow Singers, and I'm going to guess certain other fairies like High Fae also can be, but that is not confirmed. Shadow Singers are exceedingly rare. In fact, the only one we ever know about in the ACOWAR world is Azriel. Like Daemati, Shadow Singers are prized by courts and territories for their expert spy master skills and powers. We don't quite know if one is born a Shadow Singer or becomes one. Like Rhys wonders if Azriel's Shadow Singer gift came to him during the years in his father's keep, locked in darkness, and he taught himself the language of shadows. Hopefully, during the next ACOWAR book, we will learn whether you are born one or actually become one through your own needs. So, what does it mean to be a Shadow Singer? Shadow Singers are often surrounded by shadows, whether, even curling around their wrists or peeking over their shoulders, things along those lines. It's like the shadows are physically drawn to these Shadow Singers, and they're part of them, intertwined as both separate and a unit. Shadow Singers can hear and feel things others can't because of their listening shadows. The shadows are like their companions that report to them, or even like a friend, always whispering to them. For instance, the shadows can even pick up on tone and relay back to the Shadow Singer. The shadows really do have a mind of their own. Azriel describes them as sleeping or purposefully not telling him something, or dancing or practically singing when happy, or feeling emotions like curiosity. They truly are a Shadow Singer's companion. Shadow Singers can also transport through shadows, much like High Fae Winnow. It's described as a dark breeze that is cold and sharp, cutting through the world like a blade and spearing you to your destination. They can also merge into shadows and move with them, hiding themselves and others in the shadowy darkness. No wonder Shadow Singers are super stealthy and great spy masters. I'm not entirely sure how it works with making others invisible in Shadowbound 2, but we know, of course, it's possible because Azriel does this for Feyre and Elaine in this stretch of chapters. It's also important to note that they do their best stealthing and hiding in the shadows when it's dark, because, of course, during the day, there are far fewer shadows to work with and hide in. Shadow Singers can also control and wield shadows to an extent. For instance, the shadows hold things or move them for Azriel sometimes. While it may just apply to Az, I should include that a Shadow Singer's voice sounds like shadows given form, dark and smooth and cold. In the presence of people who positively impact a Shadow Singer's mood, the shadows can brighten and even disappear as if they turn into light. We don't have a lot of insight into Shadow Singers beyond everything I just listed, at least until we get to Azriel Asriel's book. Their powers seem to be as secret and mysterious as the shadows themselves. And that, friends, is our Suriel Teatime on Shadow Singers.
Let us close out this ACOWAR-only part of the episode with our Fae-vorite Moments. I mean, you literally just listed off everything about Asriel's powers, but I have to include this in my favorite moment. Everything about Asriel's powers. He is literally Feyre's own shadow at one point. Like, he is Peter Pan himself. I cannot wait for his book. I guess I just discounted it entirely, or just didn't hear it when I was listening to the audiobook prior. Like, it is so incredible what he can do. I want to be a shadow singer.
Right? It'd be
if
so
I was
cool.
in this world.
Another favorite moment is the line that describes Hybern's army camp. Quote, "This place made the Court of Nightmares seem like a human sitting room filled with chaste maidens embroidering pillows." It just makes me giggle. And it really creates quite the comparison, because it's like, oh my God, the Court of Nightmares is terrible.
Jesus Christ. I also love in the Hybern scene when the soldiers are all drinking Tamlin's stolen alcohol like they're teenagers who were left home for a weekend. That is incredible. And then, of course, Jorian's pickup lines, quote, "Seems like you've already got some steel in you. No need for mine." Gross.
Feyre notes that not even Helian's spell-cleaving magic works against Amren's wards because she's from another world. I just love that so much. It's such a nice little nugget there. And it also reminds me of how he can't help break Koschei's curse on Vassa because it's too powerful and woven into her blood. In other words, it's also too worldly for him to be able to undo.
We are about to begin our very, very short Maasverse Madness section for the day.
Today's Maasverse Madness is a mini one with minor spoilers from both the Throne of Glass and Crescent City series. So if you haven't read all three series, this is where we part ways. But before you go, reminder that next episode, we will be covering ACOWAR chapters 69 through 74. In other words, get ready for the final battle against Hybern. Oh yeah!
Part one.
Part one.
We would like to give the biggest shout out to the newest members of our Inner Circle Patreon. We appreciate you all so much. Oh my goodness. And we're so happy to have you as part of the Patreon community.
The biggest showers of love to Ashley, Natasha, Jessica, Stephanie,
Chrissy, Anya, Medina, Chandra,
Jennifer, Sarah, and Candace. And if you're like, oh my gosh, I want to be showered with love and have my name shouted out at the end of a podcast episode, be sure to join the Patreon party.
We also have new merch, or at least by the time you listen to this, we have merch. We have an amazing new merch store with many new items in it. I actually just got my Spice Watch sticker. It's right here on my computer. I love it so much. And I'm also ordering a Spice Watch apron. I cannot wait. I can't wait. Link to all the merchandise is in the show notes. And of course, do you have 5 seconds? I bet you do. That means you can rate and review the podcast. It literally takes you 5 seconds to hit that 5-star button. And if you want to be a little extra, like we know you do, you listen to this podcast, you've sat with us for 2 hours, you are an extra person. You can also write a little love note in the review section. And please note, this is so helpful to any podcast you listen to. So don't just extend your love to the Fantasy Fangirls. Any podcast deserves that love too.
We are now going to enter our Maasverse Madness segment of the episode, where we call out series crossover references and discuss theories. Today, we are discussing concepts that give minor spoilers from Crescent City and Throne of Glass, so please only continue listening if you've read both series or don't care about minor spoilers.
I mean, the first one is like, it's not even a spoiler. It's just, hey, this is a thing that's in both worlds. The white foxes that are in the Winter Court, quote, bearing what looked like to be messages strapped to their little embroidered vests. I mean, this is the otters of Prithian, which I can't decide which is cuter, the otters or the foxes. I would swoon over both. I love them. They're adorable.
I might go with the foxes, but that's only because I really love the Winter Court.
You need to read Quicksilver, woman. Oh my God. Number 2 is that Rhys telling Feyre, quote, "You do not yield." Woof. Oh my God. I was transported just right back into Kingdom of Ash pain. Now, it is important to realize ACOWAR released in May 2017, which means she was working on it all the time prior. And then Kingdom of Ash was released of September of the following year in 2018. So I wonder if actually You Do Not Yield was born as part of this exchange between Feyre and Rhys, and then she used it with Aelin in Kingdom of Ash. Number 3, I would be remiss if in the Ouroboros mirror episode, I didn't mention it possibly being a witch mirror. For the full download of that, go to ACOWAR episode 4 in the Maasverse Madness section. But especially if this mirror was Striga's, who has black blood and is described as a queen. I wonder if this is maybe even like a Vogue Queen's mirror, which is like a more extreme version of a witch mirror. I have no idea. But then there's also the tie-in between Striga being the three-faced goddess who the witches worship in Tog. So that would also kind of add that extra element of it's like a witch mirror on steroids, basically. And then last but not least, number 4, the 3 stones that are used for scrying. I immediately wondered if it's a stand-in for the 3 series and more importantly, the 3 FMCs for the 3 series. It could be another call for the Archesian amulet with the 3 interlocking circles. I mentioned that earlier with the bone carver drawing that on the cell floor. I don't know. Just the 3, I was like, oh, 3 females, 3 FMCs.
The three-faced goddess.
The 3 oh, duh. That would absolutely work too. So I don't know. I just thought that was a fun little tie-in. And I wonder if that was just a little nod to each of the 3. Now, it is important to note that by the time that ACOWAR came out, Crescent City was not out yet. But I do think she was working or at least cooking it up in her head.
Okay. Hey, everybody, that is a wrap for episode 9 of ACOWAR. Next Monday, we are covering the iconic battle scene with chapters 69 through 74. Oh, man, get ready, friends. It's going to be a doozy.
Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, a.k.a. our sanity manager. We flippin' love you, my guy. And, of course, do share this episode with your fellow ACOWAR friends. If they, like you, need to process all the more download or at least need a chronological order of events, we got you. You can go ahead and share this episode with them.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We will see you at the battlefield next week.
Bye. Also, can I just say, we are making amazing time.
I was thinking the same thing too. Like we're a third of the way through this and we're only an hour in. I also really have to pee soon. Okay. So after this part here, if I can go potty.
You can go potty, yes.